Chapter 2610 Chapter 2610 Massacre. Chapter 2610 Massacre. In Tianhuang mainland, almost all the Buddhas, divine dragons and divine elephants conjured by Monk Daming's Buddha dragon elephant were phantoms. As for Shi Wenyan's divine power before him, the Buddhas had already materialized, as though their true bodies had descended. It was the same for the divine dragons. They circled around the Buddhas and rode on clouds, no different from true dragons. Only the divine elephants beside the Buddhas did not materialize, although they looked lifelike. Instead, they were phantoms that were less robust and agile. Su Zimo was certain that Shi Wenyan had extremely deep attainments in the Dharmic Tao of the Buddhist monasteries and the dragon race. However, he did not have a deep understanding of the Dharmic Tao of the elephant race and did not meet the requirements. Therefore, his Buddha dragon elephant merely touched the threshold of a peerless divine power, and was not considered a true peerless divine power. Su Zimo was delighted when he deduced the secret of the Buddha dragon elephant. The Green Lotus true body cultivated the taboo mystic classic of the Buddhist monasteries, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Therefore, he definitely had no issue with the Dharmic Tao of the Buddhist monasteries. As for the essence spirit of the Green Lotus true body, it was synthesized with the Dragon Phoenix essence spirit to begin with, and controlled many divine powers and secret skills of the dragon race. In terms of comprehension of the Dharmic Tao of the dragon race, he had even surpassed many true dragons. He had dabbled in the Dharmic Tao of the elephant race as well. His innate divine power, the six-tusked divine strength, came from the elephant race. Furthermore, back in the Emperor's tomb, after killing Fang Xian, he obtained a high-quality cultivation technique, the divine elephant breathing technique. It also contained many Dharmic Taos of the elephant race. Back then, Fang Xian relied on this cultivation technique to attract the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation to ascend. He even cultivated the bloodline of the divine elephant, and was extremely strong. After the Green Lotus true body obtained this cultivation technique, he cultivated for many years as well and comprehended something. In other words, the foundation of the Buddha dragon elephant that he cultivated even surpassed Shi Wenyan. There was a high chance that he could cultivate Buddha dragon elephant into a peerless divine power. In the eyes of others, Shi Wenyan and Desolate Marshal were in a stalemate. However, nobody expected that Su Zimo was deducing and comprehending the Dharmic Tao of Buddha dragon elephant in that few breaths. On the battlefield, Shi Wenyan looked at the clear and bright eyes of the martial Dao prime body beneath the silver mask and suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. He did not think too much about it and sneered. "That's all there is to the Supreme Perfected Fiend. You're still restrained by my peerless divine power. Your Buddha dragon elephant is not at the level of a peerless divine power," the martial Dao prime body said indifferently. "So what?" Shi Wenyan said. "A single quasi-peerless divine power is enough to defend against you. You're way too naive." A mocking look flashed through the eyes of the martial Dao prime body. When he saw that gaze, Shi Wenyan suddenly felt uneasy. "Everyone, Nat, are you waiting? Torque, hurry and attack and join Torques to rill this fiend." Without hesitation, Shi Wenyan growled. Right then, the voice of the martial Dao prime body suddenly sounded in his mind. "Shi Wenyan, if you want to discuss Buddhism with me, do it in your next life. You are." As though he recalled something, Shi Wenyan's pupils constricted and he was shocked. He had only told a single person that he wanted to discuss Buddhism. Rank 1 of the heaven ranking, Su Zimo of the divine firmament immortal domain. Instantly, as though he understood many things, he looked at the martial Dao prime body with shock and fear. His mouth was agape, as though he wanted to shout or say something. Unfortunately, he no longer had the chance. After Su Zimo deduced the secret of Buddha dragon elephant, Shi Wenyan was no longer of any use to him. Suddenly, the martial Dao prime body exerted strength and his initially idle fist released a shocking divine power once more, shattering Shi Wenyan's Buddha dragon elephant with ease. Poof! The martial Dao prime body smashed Shi Wenyan's head with a single punch and a blood mist spread, destroying his essence spirit on the spot. The supreme Arhat, Shi Wenyan, was dead. At that moment, the divine powers, secret skills, spirit treasures and weapons of the immortals and monks beneath the Builder Tree had already descended, attacking the martial Tao prime body in an overwhelming manner. Apart from Yunzhu, Mo Qing and Lin Lei, almost all the perfected immortals and arhats released their strongest attacks. Sword shadows appeared one after another from the dustless sword, and its sharpness was revealed. It was filled with a pure sword intent, as though it wanted to cleanse the world of all dust. Shurga gripped his gigantic dagger axe with both hands and charged towards Su Zimo. Yunmubai summoned his 9 tribulations pure yang spirit treasure, a silver-white umbrella that could be used both offensively and defensively. It opened up all of a sudden, and the sharp edge of the immortal umbrella spun rapidly, slicing towards the martial Tao prime body. The experts on the Arhat ranking summoned their sentient dermic treasures one after another, and released their divine powers and secret skills with ferocious attacks. 0M. Ma. Ni. Pa. Mi. Ham. Many Arhats chanted Sanskrit of the Buddhist monasteries at the same time, forming an incomparably vast sound domain secret skill. They interacted and resonated, causing their might to increase as they surged towards the martial Tao prime body. Scram! Suddenly, the martial Tao prime body opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar in the direction of the many Arhats. Instantly, millions of living beings seemed to appear behind the martial Tao prime body and shouted at the immortals and monks present in a deafening manner. Bang! 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 Dozens of cultivators beneath the Builder Tree could not defend against the impact, and were shattered by the roar of the martial Tao prime body. Broken limbs flew everywhere. Some cultivators were shocked to death on the spot, and their essence spirits were destroyed. The cultivators beneath the Builder Tree were the top 200 paragons of the 2 domains, and the strongest perfected immortals. Even so, none of them could defend against the impact of the sound domain attack. A single roar had already destroyed the attacks of the immortals and monks. Of course, under the deliberate control of the martial Tao prime body, Yunzhu, Mo Qing and Lin Lei were almost unaffected. The attacks released by the cultivators almost collapsed before they even landed on the martial Tao prime body. By the time the dustless sword approached, the sword technique was already flickering and its strength was depleted. The martial Tao prime body grabbed the dustless sword in reverse and exerted strength in his palm. Crack! There was a crisp sound. The dustless sword was shattered into pieces by the palm of the martial Tao prime body and scattered on the ground. Zhuo Wuchen's expression changed starkly. The dustless sword was a grade 9 pure yang spirit treasure. To think that it would be snapped by desolate martial's bare hands. What sort of power was that? After the martial Tao prime body broke the sword, he punched in reverse. Zhuo Wuchen's eyes widened and he could not dodge the incoming punch no matter what. Bang! Zhuo Wuchen was turned into a blood mist by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body. Before he could splatter on the ground, he was burned to ashes by the searing heat contained in the fist of the martial Tao prime body, and his essence spirit was destroyed. At that moment, the Arhats closed in as well. Without even looking, the martial Tao prime body punched back. Poof! That punch caused the void to collapse. 5 Arhats fell into it, and could not break free, enveloped by the fist force of the martial Tao prime body. Poof! 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 All 5 Arhats died, killed by a single punch of the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 2611 Chapter 2611 Defeating Grotto-heaven. Chapter 2611 Defeating Grotto-heaven. The situation had changed way too suddenly. Earlier on, Desolate Marshal and Shi Wunyan were evenly matched. To think that Shi Wunyan would be killed by a single punch from Desolate Marshal in the blink of an eye. Shi Wunyan's defeat came too quickly and suddenly. The immortal king experts on the peak of the Builder Tree could not react for a moment. The heavenly kings of the pure land of bliss were shocked and enraged when they saw that Shi Wunyan was from Mount Meru of the pure land of bliss. He was the strongest of the Buddhist monasteries in this generation, and had just been conferred the title of the Supreme Arhat. Who would have thought that Shi Wunyan would be killed on the spot by Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain the second day after obtaining the title of the Supreme Arhat? Shi Wunyan would most likely become the Supreme Arhat who died the fastest in history. By the time the Heavenly Kings returned to their senses, the battle had already broken out. The Martial Dao Prime Body attacked consecutively, and none of the perfected immortal paragons of the two domains were his match. Blood flowed like rivers beneath the Builder Tree. The 200 perfected immortals and arhats who could cultivate beneath the Builder Tree could be considered as the future, foundation and hope of the two domains. They were the most outstanding successors of the major sects and factions. When they saw the paragons and successors die one after another, the immortal kings and heavenly kings of the major sects and factions could no longer sit still. No matter what, they had to save their successors first. If Desolate Marshal were to continue pushing forward, not many of the 200 perfected immortal paragons would survive. The supreme immortal kings of the two domains maintained their composures. It was enough for ordinary immortal kings to step in for something like this. If a supreme immortal king were to step in just to deal with a supreme perfected fiend, it would be too much. Just as the Martial Dao Prime Body was about to take advantage of the chaos to kill Sword Immortal Yuhua in the crowd, 3 immortal kings and 4 heavenly kings descended and blocked his path. 7 Grotto-heaven realm experts arrived on the battlefield and released a tremendous spirit consciousness pressure, locking onto the figure of the Martial Dao Prime Body. Fiend, hurry and stop! The lust for blood is boundless, but you can still repent. Lay down the butcher's knife, and you shall gain the chance of redemption to become a Buddha. A heavenly king of the Buddhist monasteries chanted Sanskrit, and raised his wooden mallet at the same time, knocking heavily on the wooden fish in his hands with a heart-wrenching sound. 2 other immortal king experts extended their palms and suppressed the Martial Dao Prime Body as well. Humph! Against the attacks of Grotto-heaven realm experts, the Martial Dao Prime Body did not retreat but advanced instead. With a cold harumph, he raised his fist and punched twice, colliding against the palms of the 2 immortal king experts. When they saw that, a ridiculous and strange feeling rose in the hearts of the cultivators. They did not know if Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain was a lunatic, or out of his mind. Wasn't he committing suicide by fighting against immortal king experts barehanded? Bang! Bang! The 2 immortal kings attacked at an extremely fast speed but retreated even faster. In the blink of an eye, 2 immortal kings were sent flying by 2 punches from the Martial Dao Prime Body. The 2 immortal kings were shocked. The moment they collided with the Martial Dao Prime Body, they felt an almost destructive divine power surge into their bodies wildly. The 2 of them could not defend against it at all. Creak! The 2 immortal kings felt a sharp pain in their arms, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Under countless gazes, the flesh on the arms of the 2 immortal kings were torn and their bones were broken into pieces, bursting into a blood mist. Their organs were shaken violently as well as they coughed out large mouthfuls of blood with dispirited expressions. Psst! The cultivators gasped in shock. During normal cultivation, immortal king experts would use the Grotto-heavens they condensed to nourish their bodies and bloodline. Their physiques were strong and their strength was shocking, far surpassing the perfected one realm. But now, 2 immortal kings were severely injured by 2 punches from a perfected fiend in melee combat. What sort of power was that? How strong was Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain? The remaining immortal king and 4 heavenly kings were shocked by what happened as well. The 5 Grotto-heaven realm experts had a tacit understanding and summoned their minor Grotto-heavens without hesitation. Boom! 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 The 5 Grotto-heaven realm experts released their minor Grotto-heavens, and did not dare to hold back at all. They channeled their immortal king realm combat strength to the peak. The troublesome and terrifying nature of the methods of Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain had already exceeded their imagination. They did not want to suffer a huge loss in the hands of Desolate Marshal in front of everyone. The Martial Dao Prime Body looked at the immortal king and 4 heavenly kings with a cold gaze and a shuddering sinister aura. Immediately after, the Martial Dao Prime Body channeled his blood chi and the deafening sound of a tsunami echoed from his body as his aura surged. 2 purple flames burned in his eyes as well. They were deep and bright, and could not be ignored. The next moment, the martial Tao Prime body strode forward once more and punched out against the 5 Immortal King experts. That punch enveloped the Immortal King and 4 Heavenly Kings. It exploded like fire and surged like the sea. Although that punch seemed simple, it condensed all the dermic Tao and will of the martial Tao. It was unyielding and resisting. It was true to the heart, and allows one to exact revenge and repay gratitude as they pleased. This was a simple punch without any unnecessary movements. The Tao was simplicity itself. The Prime Body's fist was the martial Tao. All the dermic Tao and power of the perfected true martial Tao body were gathered on that punch. Boom! The fist of the martial Tao Prime body collided with the 5 Grotto-heavens opposite him, and the surrounding void trembled. Immediately after, the gazes of the Immortal King and 4 Heavenly Kings changed gradually. The 5 of them looked at the martial Tao Prime body in shock and fear as they were 100k winning at a goa. Bang! Boom! Right in front of everyone, the Grotto-heavens that the 5 of them had just propped up were crushed by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime body and collapsed into nothingness. Wah! The cultivators widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. This scene had already exceeded the understanding of the cultivators. The power of the Supreme Perfected Fiend could already cross the Perfected One and Grotto-heaven realm to reach such a terrifying level? Even the Supreme Immortal Kings on the peak of the Builder Tree stood up instinctively in shock. Given their sharpness, they could naturally tell that Desolate Martial's punch earlier on did not involve the power of a Grotto-heaven. In other words, Desolate Martial of the Fiend domain had yet to advance to the Grotto-heaven realm. That punch merely made use of the power released by his body and bloodline. Even so, it was already so terrifying. Although the Immortal King and 4 Heavenly Kings had only condensed minor Grotto-heavens, the minor Grotto-heaven was still the strongest technique of Grotto-heaven experts. How could it be destroyed by a single punch? Even for them, it was difficult for them to do that without releasing their major Grotto-heavens. When the 5 minor Grotto-heavens collapsed, the Immortal King and 4 Heavenly Kings were shocked. They no longer dared to stand in front of the martial Tao Prime body as they retreated hurriedly to avoid him. 7 Grotto-heaven experts had just charged forward when they were dispersed by a few punches from the martial Tao Prime body. The moment the 7 Immortal Kings retreated, the perfected immortal paragons beneath the Builder Tree were exposed to the martial Tao Prime body once more. The gaze of the martial Tao Prime body shifted and landed on Sword Immortal Yuhua. Pissed! Instantly Sword Immortal Yuhua felt his hairs stand on end and his scalp tingle. Even his body no longer seemed to be within his control. He was targeted. Chapter 26:12 Chapter 26:12 You re not my match. Chapter 26:12 You re not my match. Sword Immortal Yuhua felt extremely wronged. Under the instigation of Shirwunyan, Zhuowuchen and the others, more than half of the cultivators beneath the Builder Tree attacked the martial Tao Prime body. There were very few cultivators who did not attack the entire time, and he was one of them. Yun Zhu and Mo Qing knew the martial Tao Prime body and would naturally not attack. As the Supreme Perfected Immortal, Jun Yu was embarrassed to join forces with others and did not move. The reason why Sword Immortal Yuhua did not attack was simple. It was because his sixth sense was telling him that a huge calamity was about to befall him. Furthermore, for some unknown reason, he had a feeling that Desolate Martial of the Fiend domain was going to make a move on him. The reason why Sword Immortal Yuhua did not attack was because he was afraid that he would do something that would give Desolate Martial of the Fiend domain a reason to attack. However, he did not expect that although he behaved himself and did not lay a single finger on Desolate Martial of the Fiend domain, he was still targeted in the end despite having no feud with the latter. Sword Immortal Yuhua was puzzled, indignant, and aggrieved. Earlier on, Desolate Martial unleashed his fiend nature, and even immortal kings of the Grotto-heaven realm were severely injured by him. What could a rank 9 of the perfected immortal ranking like him do? Desolate Martial could probably crush him with a single finger. Sword Immortal Yuhua was in no mood to defend. Without hesitation, he turned and fled while shouting for help in the direction of the peak of the builder tree. Trying to escape? The martial Dao Prime body sneered and in a flash, sped towards Sword Immortal Yuhua at an extremely fast speed. No one dared to stop him wherever he passed. Right then, a figure flashed before him, mysterious as though it was carrying a vast starry sky on its back. The Supreme Perfected Immortal, Jun Yu, had appeared. She was unwilling to join forces with others to deal with the martial Dao Prime body. Right now, she was the only one who dared to stand out and block the path of the martial Dao Prime body as well. When she saw that, Mo Qing was alarmed and worried about Jun Yu's safety. After all, in her opinion, Desolate Martial was fearless in his actions. He came from the Fiend domain and was decisive to kill. Even immortal kings who stood in his way were suppressed by him. What could Jun Yu do? Don't worry. Right then, Yunju's voice sounded in Mo Qing's mind with conviction. Nothing will happen to Jun Yu. Yunju knew the identity of the martial Dao Prime body. That was the reason why she was certain that the martial Dao Prime body would definitely not hurt Jun Yu. When he saw Jun Yu blocking his way, the martial Dao Prime body paused for a moment and said indifferently, "You're not my match." Before his sentence was finished, the martial Dao Prime body had already attacked. Unlike his previous attacks, this time round, the martial Dao Prime body did not release any apocalyptic punch. He merely closed two fingers and formed a finger sword, piercing towards Jun Yu's glabella. Before the finger sword arrived, Jun Yu felt her glabella swell slightly and a sharp pain. Indeed, he's very strong, Jun Yu thought to herself. Against Desolate Martial, she did not dare to hold back either. She conjured hand seals with both hands and pointed gently in the direction of the martial Dao Prime body, shouting softly, "Astral imprisonment!" Jun Yu did not hold back and released that peerless divine power right away. A powerful and mysterious power descended instantly. Everything in the space could not move and the passage of time could not be sensed. The air around the martial Dao Prime body seemed to have quietened down instantly. However, before long, a purple halo burst forth from the perfected true martial Dao body. It shone with countless mysterious runes, and the martial Dao Prime body broke free from astral imprisonment instantly. To be precise, he did not break free. That peerless divine power did not affect the martial Dao Prime body much. The entire situation was like a chess game. Jun Yu was disadvantaged after that single move. The martial Dao Prime body had already arrived before Jun Yu, and his finger sword hovered above her glabella, ready to spit out sword chi with killing intent at any moment. In a flash, Jun Yu moved diagonally to the back. Her movement technique was strange and extremely mysterious. The 9 palace subtle steps of Immortal Queen Ling Long. Speed was not the focus of the 9 palace subtle steps. However, in a battle, one could often survive through deadly situations and find new openings. Jun Yu released the 9 palace subtle steps and intended to distance herself from the martial Dao Prime body for the time being before making further plans. However, the moment Jun Yu dodged to the side, the martial Dao Prime body moved and followed her, as though he was tearing through the voids. The two of them were almost one after another, and there was no gap between them. The finger sword of the martial Dao Prime body was still hovering above Jun Yu's glabella. Jun Yu's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly released the 9 palace subtle steps once more, wanting to break free from the pursuit of the martial Dao Prime body. However, the martial Dao Prime body followed suit like a shadow. How is that possible? Jun Yu was alarmed. Desolate Martial could resolve the 9 palace subtle steps and even follow them? I've already said that you're not my match. The martial Dao Prime body emphasized once more. In a flash, he chased in the direction of Sword Immortal Yuhua. Don't leave, the outcome has yet to be decided. Jun Yu took a step forward, wanting to stop the martial Dao Prime body. However, she suddenly felt a trace of warmth flowing down from her glabella. Instinctively, Jun Yu touched it, and her hands were filled with blood. Her glabella was pierced. In other words, earlier on, Desolate Martial could have pierced her essence spirit if he had taken a single inch forward with his finger sword. However, Why did Desolate Marshal not kill her although he had already gone on a rampage? You could vaguely sense that Desolate Marshal seemed to treat her differently. At the very least, he did not release overly ferocious and terrifying attacks. Instead, he held back. Suddenly, you felt a sense of helplessness. The difference between them was way too great. In front of Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, even her fighting spirit was suppressed so badly that she could no longer raise her head fully. Although there was a slight delay, the Martial Dao Prime body was extremely fast. Just as Sword Immortal Yuhua was about to arrive at the Builder Tree Mountain range, he caught up to the ladder. Phew! Without a second word, the Martial Dao Prime body punched out. Suddenly, in the void beside Sword Immortal Yuhua, a crack appeared and a white-haired old man appeared in a flash. He glared at the Martial Dao Prime body and shouted, "Fiend, how dare you injure a disciple of our academy?" The Grand Elder of Heaven and Earth Academy had descended. Although the Grand Elder of the Academy was old, he had a major Grotto-heaven after all and was a supreme immortal king. When he saw that ordinary immortal kings could not stop the Martial Dao Prime body at all, the Grand Elder of the Academy could not sit still and could only appear personally. No matter what, Sword Immortal Yuhua was the #1 legacy disciple of the Academy, and they could not afford to lose him. The Grand Elder of the Academy extended his slightly scrawny palm and clenched it into a fist, channeling his bloodline to collide with the fist of the Martial Dao Prime body. Bang! The fist collided with a dull sound of defeat. Neither of them retreated a step back. A cold glint flashed through the eyes of the Martial Dao Prime body as he looked at Sword Immortal Yuhua, who was escaping wildly towards the peak of the Builder Tree. He channeled his essence spirit and circulated his divine powers and dermic arts, pointing at Sword Immortal Yuhua from afar. Eternal damnation! A peerless divine power was released. The Martial Dao Prime body rarely used divine powers or secret skills in battle. It was not because he had not mastered them, but because most of the time, there was no need for him to do it. His divine powers and secret skills were long fused into his true Martial Dao body. The moment the Martial Dao Prime body released a divine power, it was a peerless divine power that caused a commotion. Sword Immortal Yuhua turned back with a pale expression and despair in his heart. Given his strength, he could not withstand the peerless divine power at all. Furthermore, eternal damnation was even more terrifying than astral imprisonment in terms of killing power. The Grand Elder of the Academy was held back by the Martial Dao Prime body and could not extricate himself for the time being. He could only wave his robes and release a powerful secret skill that charged towards eternal damnation. Chapter 26:13 Chapter 26:13 Punishment. Chapter 26:13 Punishment. Eternal damnation originated from the final heavenly tribulation of the 9 of 9 heavenly tribulations. A myriad of heavenly tribulations transformed into countless runes that emitted a destructive aura and descended, covering the skies densely. There was the Formation Tribulation, Residency Tribulation, Destruction Tribulation, Emptiness Tribulation, Fire Tribulation, Water Tribulation, Wind Tribulation, Weapon Tribulation. Each tribulation evolved into countless minor tribulations, 3 calamities, 9 catastrophes and 10 negative karma tribulations. Like a tsunami of heavenly tribulations, they surged and devoured towards Sword Immortal Yuhua. Instantly, an apocalyptic scene appeared above Sword Immortal Yuhua's head. In the tsunami of heavenly tribulations, Sword Immortal Yuhua trembled slightly and looked incomparably insignificant. The sharpness of the true essence on his body was already torn into pieces. Sword Immortal Yuhua endured the pressure with bloodshot eyes. As though he was giving it his all, he channeled his Tao Fruit Essence spirit and condensed his true essence, releasing divine powers and secret skills one after another. However, his divine powers and secret skills surged into the tsunami of heavenly tribulations like a rock entering the sea. They did not cause any ripples and vanished in the blink of an eye. In the face of the peerless divine power, all his counterattacks were insignificant. Right then, the secret skill of the Grand Elder of the Academy descended, and a heavenly encompassing palm appeared above Sword Immortal Yuhua's head, supporting the surging tsunami of heavenly tribulations. Although the Peerless divine power was strong, the martial Tao prime body was restricted by his cultivation realm, and eternal damnation could not injure a supreme immortal king like the Grand Elder of the Academy. However, the tsunami of heavenly tribulations surged continuously, wanting to flow through the gaps between the fingers of the heavenly encompassing palm and continue to threaten Sword Immortal Yuhua. Humph! The Grand Elder of the Academy harumphed coldly, and suddenly exerted strength in his heavenly encompassing palm, gripping it into a fist. Boom! The tsunami of heavenly tribulations suddenly exploded and a loud bang sounded in midair. The grab of that heavenly encompassing palm contained the terrifying power of a supreme immortal king, and destroyed the divine power of eternal damnation instantly. Sword Immortal Yuhua was right beside the heavenly encompassing palm and eternal damnation. The aftershock of the collision of the two powers surged and formed a storm that engulfed him instantly. Sword Immortal Yuhua shrieked. Although eternal damnation was destroyed by the Grand Elder of the Academy, there were still many dilapidated heavenly tribulations and damaged runes that retained the dermic Tao of the Peerless divine power. Naturally, such a dermic Tao posed no threat to an immortal king. But Sword Immortal Yuhua was only a perfected immortal and could not defend against it at all. If the Grand Elder of the Academy had not chosen to fight eternal damnation head-on and merely blocked it, Sword Immortal Yuhua would have had a chance to escape. However, the Grand Elder of the Academy chose to take the Peerless divine power head-on. The aftershock spread and it was too late for Sword Immortal Yuhua to escape. In the blink of an eye, wounds appeared on Sword Immortal Yuhua's body. Some of them were so deep that his bones could be seen, and some of them even revealed his organs in a shocking manner. The most tragic thing was that one of Sword Immortal Yuhua's arms made contact with a shattered rune of the weapon Tribulation, and it was forcibly severed. Sword Immortal Yuhua fell to the ground and his body convulsed continuously, letting out a tragic cry. He was covered in blood and did not even look like a human anymore. When the Grand Elder of the Academy saw the tragic state of Sword Immortal Yuhua, his expression changed. He propped up his major Grotto-heaven and repelled the martial Tao prime body, arriving beside Sword Immortal Yuhua instantly. The Grand Elder of the Academy took out a few immortal pills and sent them into Sword Immortal Yuhua's mouth. Thereafter, he conjured hand seals consecutively and released a few healing secret skills that struck Sword Immortal Yuhua. It hurts! After a few healing secret skills, Sword Immortal Yuhua's cries turned even more tragic. His body convulsed and his injuries showed no signs of healing. Perhaps because the immortal pills had some effect or because of the few healing secret skills of the Grand Elder of the Academy, Sword Immortal Yuhua seemed to have regained a momentary clarity as he looked at the Grand Elder with a pleading expression. It's too painful! Hurry, kill me and give me a swift death! Sword Immortal Yuhua's voice trembled slightly. Looking at Sword Immortal Yuhua at the foot of the mountain, the cultivators gasped and shuddered when they heard the terrifying tragic cries. Eternal damnation! That's way too terrifying! Once he's struck by that Peerless divine power, no injuries can be healed. At this rate, Sword Immortal Yuhua won't be able to hold on for long and will be tortured to death by his injuries. One of the three great sword immortals of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and rank 9 of the Perfected Immortal ranking. To think that he would end up in such a state today. When the immortals and monks saw that, they were filled with emotions. Initially, everyone felt pity for Shi Wenyan and the others when they saw Desolate Marshal kill them with a single punch. But now, compared to Sword Immortal Yuhua, Shi Wenyan and the others might have been lucky to die without any pain. Another person sighed. If he had known earlier, Sword Immortal Yuhua wouldn't have escaped. He would have chosen to be punched to death by Desolate Marshal instead of suffering such pain and torture. Although Mo Qing was long displeased with Sword Immortal Yuhua, she could not help but shake her head and sigh gently when she saw him in such a tragic state. Sword Immortal Yuhua had once said in front of her, "If Desolate Marshal dares to appear in front of me, I'll definitely sever his facade and destroy his myth with a single slash. Those words seemed to have happened yesterday. It was a little ironic when she recalled that scene. Back then, even Sword Immortal Youvoir himself had not expected that he would truly encounter Desolate Marshal and end up in such a state. Although there were many cultivators present, apart from Yunju, there was probably no one else who knew why Desolate Marshal targeted Sword Immortal Youvoir. Sword Immortal Youvoir targeted Su Zimo repeatedly, and even joined forces with outsiders to try and kill him. If he killed Sword Immortal Youvoir directly, it would be letting the latter off too easily. The only way to punish him was to let him die in pain and torment. At the side of the green firmament immortal domain, Lin Luo looked at Sword Immortal Youvoir, who was covered in blood and screaming repeatedly, and frowned slightly. Mother, is there no way to dispel eternal damnation? Lin Luo asked. Immortal Queen Linglong said. Of course there is, but it's very difficult unless Youvoir can comprehend the secrets of the Grotto-heaven realm and become an immortal king. Judging from his current situation, it's difficult for him to survive, let alone attempt to advance to the Grotto-heaven realm. Lin Luo asked again. Eternal damnation is only a peerless divine power after all. Can't the immortal kings purge and suppress that power? Of course we can. Immortal Queen Linglong said. Any immortal king present can purge eternal damnation as long as they summon their Grotto-heaven. However, at the same time, Youvoir won't be able to survive and will be crushed to death by the power of the Grotto-heaven. The Dharmic Tao of eternal damnation had already fused into every single wound on Sword Immortal Youvoir's body. If his essence spirit wanted to escape, it would be struck by the power of eternal damnation. Purging eternal damnation from him meant that his body, bloodline, and even eternal damnation would be suppressed and crushed. Pausing for a moment, Immortal Queen Linglong changed the topic. However, nothing is absolute. If there's an immortal king whose Grotto-heaven condenses endless life force, it might be able to help him dispel eternal damnation and save his life. However, there are extremely few immortal kings like that. At the very least, I've never heard of an immortal king in the heavenly world possessing such a Grotto-heaven. Chapter 2614, Chapter 2614, A Slap. Chapter 2614, A Slap. The Grand Elder of the Academy looked at Sword Immortal Youvoir, who was in pain with a conflicted and hesitant expression. He raised his palms slowly, but it hovered in midair, unable to descend. Killing Sword Immortal Youvoir and giving him a swift death so that he would not be tormented by eternal damnation might just be the best outcome for him. However, Sword Immortal Youvoir was the #1 legacy disciple of the Academy after all, and the Grand Elder could not bring himself to do it. Youvoir, if I send you back to the Academy, the sect master might be able to save your life. As for... The Grand Elder of the Academy hesitated and did not continue. He did not wish to continue inflicting blows on Sword Immortal Youvoir. Even if the sect master of the Academy could save Sword Immortal Youvoir's life, he would be more than half crippled. Sword Immortal Youvoir might even be inferior to many legacy disciples in the future, let alone advance to the Grotto-heaven realm to become an immortal king. Furthermore, this blow would have a huge impact on Sword Immortal Youvoir. From now on, the title of Sword Immortal Youvoir in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and even the entire heavenly world would be completely destroyed. The Grand Elder of the Academy sighed gently and tore through the void with Sword Immortal Youvoir, returning to Heaven and Earth Academy. Apart from him, there were more than 100 ordinary immortal kings and more than 20 supreme immortal kings watching. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain could not escape at all. For the Grand Elder of the Academy, it was more important to save Sword Immortal Youvoir. On the side of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain, although Immortal Queen Linglong was still seated a far distance away, her upper body was slightly straightened and she had a grim expression, looking tense. Su Zimo, if your aim was to suppress the Zither Immortal this time round, you have already achieved your goal. You should leave as soon as possible, or it will be too late. Immortal Queen Linglong sent a voice transmission to the Green Lotus True Body on the side of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and reminded secretly with her spirit consciousness. There's no hurry, Su Zimo replied. Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned slightly and reminded again. You have to understand that now that you have injured and forced back ordinary immortal kings, the supreme immortal kings present can no longer sit still. You just fought with the Grand Elder of the Academy. You should know that the difference in strength between ordinary immortal kings and supreme immortal kings is extremely great. I saw that you didn't gain any advantage in your clash with the Grand Elder of the Academy. In fact, I'm afraid you were even disadvantaged. Su Zimo sent a voice transmission. Indeed. The power of my martial Dao Prime body is not enough to go against supreme immortal kings yet. One more thing. Immortal Queen Ling Long continued. The situation here is unlike Lang Feng, City of the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain. Back then, there were no immortal kings holding down the fort, and you could leave with your hell suppression tripod at any time. However, at this moment, the supreme immortal kings present can't sit still any longer. If these people join forces and seal the void, you won't be able to leave this place even if you want to summon the hell suppression tripod to break through the void. Sealing the void was something that immortal king experts could do. Immortal Queen Ling Long was afraid that Su Zimo might not understand the pros and cons fully, so she reminded him. Since immortal king experts could break through the void, they could naturally join forces to seal the void to prevent other immortal king experts from leaving casually. Once the 20-odd supreme immortal kings present attacked and sealed the void, even if immortal Queen Ling Long joined the fray, she would not be able to escape with the martial Dao Prime body. At that time, no one would be able to save the martial Dao Prime body. Su Zimo had a calm expression. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Ling Long. It would be best if these supreme immortal kings joined forces to seal the void. I was even afraid that they would be wary and not dare to attack the martial Dao Prime body. Immortal Queen Ling Long was smart, and could vaguely tell that Su Zimo seemed to be implying something. However, she could not figure it out right away and said exasperatedly, You killed perfected immortal paragons of the two domains so domineeringly and even injured a few immortal kings. Even if they have reservations, they can't sit by idly and let you do whatever you want. Do be careful. Immortal Queen Ling Long reminded again. On the battlefield, the martial Dao Prime body did not stop the Grand Elder of the Academy from taking Sword Immortal Yu Hua away. His heart skipped a beat, and his expression turned cold when he sensed the commotion behind him. The martial Dao Prime body released his spirit consciousness and gathered the remaining Eternal Damnation Dermic Dao in his palm, turning it into a dark red light. Immediately after, he retreated and sped in the direction of the Immortal Fiend Abyss. After the outcome for the Zither competition between the Zither Immortal and Fiend was decided, Heavenly Wolf obeyed the orders of the martial Dao Prime body and carried Chiu Silyo in the direction of the Fiend domain. Thereafter, a huge battle broke out beneath the Builder Tree and the martial Dao Prime body went on a massacre. Out of curiosity, Heavenly Wolf turned around and looked back while heading towards the Immortal Fiend Abyss at a slightly slower speed. Just as the martial Dao Prime body was fighting against the Grand Elder of the Academy, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, who was initially still slumped on the ground in a daze, suddenly snapped out of her stupor. It was as though she had regained consciousness instantly. She raised her head suddenly and looked at Chiu Silyo, who was in the distance with deep jealousy in her eyes. Swoosh! In a flash, Meng Yao chased after Chiu Silyo with a cold and murderous expression. When Heavenly Wolf saw Meng Yao chasing after them, he could not help but jump in shock and sprinted towards the Immortal Fiend Abyss hurriedly. However, his and Chiu Silyo's cultivation realms were only at the Heaven Immortal realm. In terms of speed, they could not compare to Meng Yao, who was at the peak of the perfected Immortal realm. Just as he was about to reach the Immortal Fiend Abyss, Meng Yao caught up to him. Your Zither skills can't compare to mine at all. Meng Yao looked at Chiu Silyo on the back of the Heavenly Wolf and felt endless indignance as she shrieked. The reason why you can defeat me is because of the soul-reaping Zither. This ancient Zither should have been an opportunity for me. As long as I kill you and retrieve the soul-reaping Zither, I will still be the Zither Immortal and one of the 4 great fairies. There was no fear on Chiu Siluo's face. Instead, there was a hint of pity in the way she looked at Meng Yao. Do you really think that your defeat was because of an external object? Chiu Siluo asked softly. Those words pierced Meng Yao's chest like a sharp blade. She shuddered. As Chiu Siluo had said, she knew very well in the depths of her heart the reason why she was defeated. She blamed everything on the soul-reaping zither because she was unwilling to face it. I don't care. Meng Yao grit her teeth. I want to take back what is mine. Meng Yao was not only referring to the soul-reaping zither, but also all of the glory and reputation that once belonged to her. Die. Meng Yao channeled her Dao fruit and a halo appeared behind her head. Her spirit consciousness condensed, and she released an essence spirit secret skill at Chiu Siluo. Right then, a figure suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Meng Yao. Her essence spirit secret skills collided against the silver mask on the figure's face and seemed to ripple before vanishing. The martial Dao prime body had arrived. You. When Meng Yao saw the mask and looked at the pair of eyes burning with purple flames behind the silver mask, her expression changed, and she was so scared that she could not speak. The martial Dao prime body was expressionless as he raised his hand and slapped Meng Yao. A scarlet light flashed in his palm and entered Meng Yao's cheek. That was the remnant of eternal damnation. Chapter 26:15, Chapter 26:15, Other Schemes. Chapter 26:15, Other Schemes. Piak! The slap of the martial Dao prime body sent Meng Yao flying dozens of feet away. Initially, Meng Yao thought that she would definitely die. After all, she had just witnessed the methods of the martial Dao prime body, and he could even kill Shi Wunyan with a single punch. Even the minor Grotto-heavens of immortal kings were shattered. No matter how tough her head was, she could not defend against the power of desolate Martial's slap. However, when she was sent flying, her ears buzzed and her vision blurred. She composed herself and sat up. She was not dead? A fiend like desolate Martial actually knew how to cherish women? Instantly, Meng Yao's mind was filled with thoughts. However, she quickly noticed something unusual. Many cultivators in the surroundings looked at her strangely with a hint of fear and pity. Some cultivators were even unwilling to meet her gaze and averted it. Right then, Meng Yao finally felt a tearing pain on her cheek. Instinctively, she touched it, and her palm was filled with blood. Such superficial wounds had no effect on perfected immortals at all. Meng Yao channeled her essence spirit Dao fruit and circulated her bloodline, wanting to heal the injuries on her cheek. However, she quickly realized that the wound on her face could not heal. Even after she consumed a large number of immortal pills, there were no signs of recovery. Although the blood flow from the wound had stopped for the time being, there was a menacing scar on her face. Her bright red flesh was overturned and her initially beautiful face was completely torn apart. Anyone who saw that face would only feel fear and would definitely not associate her with the heavenly four great fairies. At that moment, Meng Yao finally understood why the surrounding cultivators were looking at her strangely. The two reasons why she was able to become one of the four great fairies were because of her superb zither skills and her devastatingly beautiful face. Those were also the reasons why she was proud. But now, desolate Martial of the Fiend domain had appeared and destroyed two of her most valued elements. Everyone knew in their hearts that what desolate Martial just did was even more terrifying than killing zither immortal Meng Yao directly. This outcome was a fate worse than death for Meng Yao. In reality, after eternal damnation was struck by the secret skill of the Grand Elder of the Academy, and more than half of it was absorbed by Sword Immortal Yu Hua, there was not much power left in the Dermic Dao. Even so, it left an irrecoverable scar on Meng Yao's face. You've ruined me. Why? Why are you so cruel to me? I have no feud with you at all. Meng Yao sat in the mud with disheveled hair and a lost expression. She murmured softly with listless eyes. The blow to her this time round was way too great. In fact, the martial Dao prime body even killed her chance of making a comeback. The beauty and zither Dao that she relied on was crippled by the martial Dao prime body. She lost all her dignity today, and her past glory vanished into thin air. In less than half a day, she fell from her high and mighty pedestal into a bottomless abyss where she could not see the light of day. Right then, on the other side, Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath rushed over when he saw that Chiosilio was in danger. However, by the time he arrived, the Martial Dao Prime Body had already dealt with Meng Yao. Zimo, let's go. Today's matter has ended. Feng Cantillon looked at the group of immortal kings opposite him and felt uneasy as he sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Although he was fearless, he did not want to die here foolishly. In the future, he was going to kill his way back to the divine firmament immortal domain and take revenge on King Jin and his heir. Brother Feng, take them back first. The tone of the Martial Dao Prime Body was calm, as though he did not notice any danger. We'll leave together, Feng Cantillon insisted. The Martial Dao Prime Body said, take Heavenly Wolf and Chiosilio back to the other side first. Remember, don't attack no matter what happens later on. You. Feng Cantillon could tell that there seemed to be a deeper meaning in the words of the Martial Dao Prime Body. He did not ask in detail and merely nodded. He led Heavenly Wolf and Chiosilio to leap through the immortal fiend abyss and return to the fiend domain. Isn't the sect master coming back yet? Gu Tongyo's eyes were melancholic and worried. Feng Cantillon pondered for a moment. The sect master should have other motives. Let's wait and see. Don't act rashly. Beneath the builder tree, the top 200 perfected immortal paragons of the 9 firmament immortal domain and pure land of bliss seized the opportunity to disperse and flee far away. There were only a few people who remained on the spot. Among them were the 3 great fairies, Book Immortal Yunzhu, Painting Immortal Mo Qing and Chess Immortal Junyu. The Martial Dao Prime Body walked slowly towards the builder tree. The immortal kings were secretly alarmed and tore through the void one after another, blocking in front of the Martial Dao Prime Body. They were on guard and nervous. All the immortal kings witnessed what happened earlier on. A single punch from the Martial Dao Prime Body shattered the Grotto-heavens of 5 immortal kings. How far had Desolate Martial cultivated to? The many immortal kings could clearly tell that Desolate Martial did not have the aura of the Grotto-heaven realm. However, the power he released was even above the ordinary immortal kings. On the peak of Builder Tree, the 20-odd supreme immortal kings exchanged glances and stood up slowly, emitting a tremendous might that surged over. Immortal Queen Ling Long glanced sideways at Su Zimo of the divine firmament immortal domain. At that moment, Su Zimo had a calm expression, as though he could not sense any danger. If you want to leave, this is your last chance. Immortal Queen Ling Long hesitated for a moment, and could not help but send a voice transmission with yet another reminder. She could not divine everything about the Martial Dao Prime Body, nor could she guess his intentions. Don't worry, Senior. Su Zimo's voice was calm and he did not explain further. The Martial Dao Prime Body looked at the 20-odd supreme immortal kings on the peak of Builder Tree and suddenly said, Why? Are the supreme immortal kings of the 2 domains prepared to attack? Prince Jinsa of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain was crippled and Immortal King Long Night was enraged. At that moment, his gaze was dark as he said slowly, Desolate Martial, how dare you come to the 9 firmament? Meet and start a massacre. If we let you leave alive, where will our dignity go? That's right. Immortal King Qin Yang raised his voice and said, You claim to be the supreme perfected fiend, but in reality, you're already an immortal king expert who can defeat those with minor Grotto-heavens. It won't be considered bullying if we attack you. Desolate Martial, there's no need for you to try and escape from this place. Immortal King Qiping sneered. I don't mind telling you that the void here has already been sealed by us. Even if you summon the Hell Suppression tripod, you won't be able to escape back to Avici. Amitabha. Heavenly King Luotian of the Pure Land of Bliss clasped his palms together and chanted the Buddhist proclamation softly. Desolate Martial, the Hell Suppression tripod in your possession is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries. It's time for you to return it to its rightful owner today. The Hell Suppression tripod was the Emperor weapon of Great Emperor Infinite, and was related to Avici. Even the immortal kings of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain wanted to take it for themselves, let alone the heavenly kings of the pure land of bliss. Furthermore, when they saw the martial Tao Prime Body release such a terrifying power, the imaginations of the immortal kings ran wild and they thought that it had something to do with Avici. All right. The eyes of the martial Tao Prime Body shone with purple flames and his fighting spirit surged as he said slowly, "This is a good opportunity for me to experience the capabilities of the supreme immortal kings of the two domains." Chapter 26:16, Chapter 26:16, Everlasting Night. Chapter 26:16, Everlasting Night. When the martial Tao Prime Body said that, the immortals and monks on the peak of the Builder Tree were shocked. How many years had it been since the rise of the Fiend Domain's Desolate Marshal? Desolate Marshal had just been conferred the title of the Supreme Perfected Fiend not long ago. Today, he was actually declaring that he wanted to fight against the supreme immortal kings of the two domains. It was only at that moment that everyone gradually understood that the Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat were not Desolate Marshal's targets. In the eyes of Desolate Marshal, the two ranking lists were indeed a joke. Desolate Marshal was here for the immortal kings of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss. Furthermore, it was the Supreme Immortal Kings. Ever since the Nine Firmament meet was held, no one from the Fiend Domain had dared to cause trouble here. Furthermore, the Nine Firmament meet this time round was different from the past. The two domains sent more than 100 ordinary immortal kings and more than 20 supreme immortal kings with a massive might. Up till the end of the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings, everything went smoothly and peacefully. Who would have thought that Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain would single-handedly cause a blood storm at the Nine Firmament meet today? Let's see what else you have! Immortal King Long Night of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain attacked and arrived before the martial Tao Prime Body instantly. He raised his palm and slapped the head of the martial Tao Prime Body. After entering the Grotto-heaven realm and becoming an immortal king, many divine powers and secret skills were condensed in the Grotto-heaven. As for the Grotto-heaven, it nourished the body and bloodline throughout the years. Therefore, the body and bloodline of an immortal king contained the power of the Grotto-heaven and could release a shocking power with every move. For a fight between Grotto-heaven realm experts, it was a little like returning to nature and simplifying things. Although it seemed like it was a simple palm strike from Immortal King Long Night, it contained the power of the Grotto-heaven. It vaguely sealed the void around the martial Tao Prime Body, preventing him from dodging, and he could only take it head-on. The martial Tao Prime Body was expressionless as he circulated his blood chi, letting out the deafening sound of raging tides. What strong blood chi! The surrounding immortal kings were secretly alarmed when they heard the sound of blood chi rising. How did Desolate Marshal cultivate to such an extent before he even entered the Grotto-heaven realm? Could it be that this person had already condensed the Grotto-heaven and merely hid his aura without revealing it? Bang! The martial Tao Prime Body punched out and collided with the palm of Immortal King Long Night. Both parties shuddered. All right. The gaze of Immortal King Long Night intensified as he attacked consecutively. The martial Tao Prime Body was fearless as he stood in midair and counterattacked. Both parties clashed consecutively in midair, and their fists and palms collided with a deafening bang, causing many cracks to appear in the void and the world to tremble. This was a fight between immortal kings. Even without the use of the Grotto-heaven, the void would still shake. Both parties clashed for more than 10 rounds and were evenly matched. Immortal King Long Night narrowed his eyes slightly. As a supreme immortal king, the Grotto-heaven had nourished his body and bloodline for hundreds of thousands of years. Even after launching consecutive attacks today, he could not gain any advantage against Desolate Marshal at all. Of course, he was only surprised but not nervous. The power released by Desolate Marshal earlier on was not enough to threaten him. Furthermore, he did not use his full strength. For Immortal King experts, the Grotto-heaven was their strongest technique. The other Immortal King experts such as Immortal King Qin Yang exchanged glances with smiles and relaxed expressions. Given the current situation, there was no need for them to attack. Immortal King Long Night alone was enough to suppress Desolate Marshal. Long Night, don't get entangled with him. Suppress him as soon as possible lest other variables appear. Immortal King Qingyang said in a deep voice. All right. Immortal King Long Night hollered and channeled his essence spirit to prop up his major Grotto-heaven. The void behind him suddenly collapsed and a dark void without any light appeared. That was his Long Night Grotto-heaven. In this Grotto-heaven, one would fall into a long night and it was difficult to see light. With the appearance of the major Grotto-heaven, the aura of Immortal King Long Night surged and his combat strength rose as well. It's time to end things. Immortal King Long Night said indifferently. He reached into the Grotto-heaven behind him and withdrew a pitch-black spear. A Grotto-heaven spirit treasure! After cultivators advanced to the Immortal King realm, their sentient dermic treasures could also be placed into the Grotto-heaven and nourished by it. As time passed by, when the sentient dermic treasure fused completely with the Grotto-heaven, they would transform into Grotto-heaven spirit treasures. Any Grotto-heaven spirit treasure would contain the dermic Tao of the Grotto-heaven and was extremely powerful. Swoosh! Immortal King Long Night supported his Grotto-heaven and strode forward. Waving the pitch-black spear in his hands, he stabbed towards the Martial Tao Prime Body with an apocalyptic might. The Martial Tao Prime Body had a calm expression and a green light flashed on his glabella. The Hell Suppression tripod appeared and was filled with an ancient aura as electric arcs coiled around it with an extraordinary might. When the Immortal Kings saw the Hell Suppression tripod, their eyes lit up. This was the weapon of Great Emperor Infinite in the past. More importantly, the Hell Suppression tripod was the key to controlling the infinite hell. There was no Grotto-heaven aura on the Hell Suppression tripod. This confirmed everyone's guess that Desolate Marshal of the Fiend domain had not entered the Grotto-heaven realm at all. Many Immortal Kings glared at the Hell Suppression tripod with puzzled expressions, as though they had discovered something. The realm of the Hell Suppression tripod had fallen. After passing through the perfected one heavenly tribulation, it was merely at the level of a sentient dermic treasure. But now, they could see remnant marks left behind by 10 heavenly tribulations on the Hell Suppression tripod. Could the legend be true? Did Desolate Marshal really attract the 10th heavenly tribulation? When the news spread, even the many Immortal Kings present scoffed and did not believe it, let alone Yu Hua and the other perfected immortals. After all, throughout history, there had never been a 10th tribulation since life was born in the upper world. At that moment, when the Immortal Kings saw the 10 burn marks on the Hell Suppression tripod with their own eyes, they vaguely realized that there was a high chance the rumors of the past were true. There was truly a 10th tribulation in the perfected one heavenly tribulation. Why were there no records of the 10th tribulation throughout history? Even people as talented as the great emperors of the past went through the 9 of 9 heavenly tribulation at the very most. Clang! Just as everyone's imagination was running wild, the pitch-black spear collided heavily against the Hell Suppression tripod and electric arcs flew everywhere. This time round, the Martial Tao Prime Body retreated a few steps in succession. However, with the Hell Suppression tripod that had passed through the 10th tribulation, the Martial Tao Prime Body still managed to defend against the accumulated attack of Immortal King Long Night. Although the cultivation realm of the Hell Suppression tripod had fallen, it was an emperor weapon back then after all. Furthermore, it was the key to suppressing the infinite hell. Even the Grotto-heaven spirit treasure could not destroy it with ease. Humph! When Immortal King Long Night saw that he could not suppress the Martial Tao Prime Body even after summoning his major Grotto-heaven and Grotto-heaven spirit treasure, he had a terrible expression and could not help but harumph coldly before attacking once more. This time round, the blood chi of Immortal King Long Night surged as he wielded his spear and attacked. The major Grotto-heaven carried endless might and suppressed the Martial Tao Prime Body. He wanted to make use of his Long Night Grotto-heaven to devour Desolate Marshal and refine him completely as nourishment for his Grotto-heaven. Chapter 26:17, Chapter 26:17, Unable to Devour. Chapter 26:17, Unable to Devour. The everlasting night and boundless darkness crept forth. Instantly, the world went dark and the heavens lost its light. Immortal King Long Night used his Grotto-heaven spirit treasure to restrain the hell suppression tripod while the major Grotto-heaven behind him devoured the figure of the martial Tao prime body. "It's all over." When the immortal kings saw that, they shook their heads gently. As long as desolate martial fell into the major Grotto-heaven of immortal King Long Night, he would be reduced to fish that could be slaughtered at will, no matter how shocking his methods were. Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned worriedly. On the side of the fiend domain, Thong Cantian took a deep breath and suppressed his urge to attack, continuing to watch. The martial Tao prime body had repeatedly instructed him not to attack. He believed that the martial Tao prime body would not die so easily. In the long night Grotto-heaven, the gaze of the martial Tao prime body intensified. Purple flames burned in his eyes and his blood chi surged as he channeled his bloodline to its limits, releasing his bloodline phenomenon, the heaven and earth furnace. Boom! The martial Tao prime body stood in the darkness and shone with an endless brilliance as flames surged into the skies. The flames included the martial spirit fire, tribulation fire, red lotus karmic fire, dragon phoenix flame, and hellfire. Despite the buff of so many flames, he was still unable to go against the long night Grotto-heaven. However, it was also impossible for the long night Grotto-heaven to devour and refine the martial Tao prime body. For example, hellfire originated from Avici. Due to the cultivation realm of the martial Tao prime body, its power was far inferior to when it was in Avici. However, the long night Grotto-heaven could not refine it at all. Initially, the Grotto-heaven was dark and silent. However, after devouring the martial Tao prime body, a gigantic ball of flames appeared in the Grotto-heaven. Both parties were in a stalemate. The blood chi of the martial Tao prime body was strong, and even as time passed by, the flames burned furiously without stopping. However, the power of the long night Grotto-heaven was being depleted. When immortal King Long Night sensed this, his expression darkened. On the battlefield, Heavenly King Luotian chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly and said, "Patron Long Night, you sure are capable. Your merits for killing perfected Fiend Desolate Martial are immeasurable. However, the Hell Suppression Tripod is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries. Patron Long Night, please return it to its rightful owner." Immortal King Qin Yang smiled gently. "The Hell Suppression Tripod is an Emperor weapon. It's said to be connected to the infinite hell and a taboo mystic classic. Fellow Taoist Luotian, you're not the only one. I believe everyone present is interested in the Hell Suppression Tripod." Immortal King Qiping said indifferently. "The Hell Suppression Tripod no longer has an owner. Since we're all present, we can't hand it over to someone casually." The immortal kings present thought that Desolate Martial would definitely die and had already begun to discuss the ownership of the Hell Suppression Tripod. Right then, a violent fluctuation came from the major Grotto-heaven of immortal King Long Night. In the endless darkness, a flame appeared and intensified. Immediately after, the ball of flames fell onto the battlefield. In the flames, a figure stood. It was Desolate Martial of the Fiend Domain. The immortal kings frowned. What was going on? The long night Grotto-heaven failed to refine Desolate Martial and spat him out instead. Sensing the gazes around him, immortal King Long Night had a terrible expression as he grit his teeth. "This fiend is in possession of strange dermic das and controls many powerful flames. It's difficult to refine him." Amitba. Heavenly King Luotian strode forward. "Seems like I'm the only one who can subdue this fiend." When Heavenly King Luotian arrived before the martial Tao prime body, he summoned his major Grotto-heaven without a second word. A Buddhist light shone from within and auspicious clouds filled the skies, enveloping the martial Tao prime body. Thereafter, Heavenly King Luotian assumed a lotus position and hovered in midair. He held prayer beads in his hands and chanted Buddhist dermic incantations softly. The dermic incantations turned into golden runes that entered the major Grotto-heaven behind him. Before long, Heavenly King Luotian fiddled with the prayer beads in his hands faster, and a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. A moment later, he suddenly stood up. A figure shrouded in flames flew out from the major Grotto-heaven that was filled with Buddhist light behind him. It was Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. It was not just the Grotto-heavens of the immortal sects. Even the Grotto-heavens of the Buddhist monasteries could not refine the Martial Tao Prime Body. Fu. The Martial Tao Prime Body chuckled and surveyed his surroundings. His gaze swept past the faces of Immortal King Qin Yang and the others, and he mocked. Is that all there is to the supreme immortal kings of the two domains? In my opinion, there's no need for you guys to hold the 9 firmament meet again in the future. It'll just be a joke. Fiend, how brazen! How arrogant! The immortal kings were enraged. Even the 20-odd supreme immortal kings of the two domains revealed sinister killing intent. At the immortal king realm, one was almost at the peak of the upper world and could rule over millions of living beings. They could not withstand any humiliation or provocation. Furthermore, cultivators of both domains were gathered here and everyone was watching. If they could not suppress Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, the immortal kings of the two domains would probably become jokes of the upper world after today. There were not many immortal kings who could remain calm. Immortal Queen Ling Long could tell that the words of the Martial Tao Prime Body were clearly meant to anger many immortal kings present, including the supreme immortal kings. However, she truly could not figure out the meaning behind the actions of the Martial Tao Prime Body. She could only guess the consequences of the actions of the Martial Tao Prime Body. Initially, for the sake of their dignity, the supreme immortal kings present were embarrassed to join forces against the supreme perfected fiend. Now that they were provoked by the Martial Tao Prime Body, there was a high chance that the 20-odd supreme immortal kings would join forces to suppress the Martial Tao Prime Body in their rage. Don't waste your breath on him. Immortal King Long Night grit his teeth and said, This person's Dharmic Tao is strange. Let's release our major Grotto-heavens and join forces to destroy him. Exactly. Heavenly King Luotian said in a deep voice. Since I can't devour and refine this fiend, I can only crush his body and bloodline to purify him forcefully. Come on, let's see how much longer this fiend can last against our combined forces. Immortal King Qin Yang expressed his stance as well. In the blink of an eye, 19 supreme immortal kings stood out and surrounded the Martial Tao Prime Body. The 19 supreme immortal kings released their major Grotto-heavens in unison. Instantly, the world changed. On the battlefield, 19 major Grotto-heavens with different Dharmic Taos appeared and crushed towards the Martial Tao Prime Body with a terrifying aura. Immortal Queen Ling Long's heart skipped a beat, and she stood up instinctively. Under such circumstances, even if she was in his position, she would not be able to escape. The 19 major Grotto-heavens had already sealed all exits in all directions. Desolate Marshal might be able to avoid being devoured and refined by a Grotto-heaven due to some strange Dharmic Tao, but there was no way he could defend against the suppression of 19 major Grotto-heavens. Immortal Queen Ling Long had just seen it clearly. Although Desolate Marshal was not refined by Immortal King Long Night and Heavenly King Luotian's Grotto-heavens, he suffered quite a blow and his aura became much weaker. If the 19 major Grotto-heavens crushed over at the same time, there was only a single outcome for Desolate Marshal. His body and essence spirit would be destroyed. Chapter 26:18, Chapter 26:18, Success. Chapter 26:18, Success. On the peak of the Builder Tree. Although Su Zimo looked calm, he was actually extremely nervous internally. Although the Green Lotus True Body was not involved and would not be implicated, the choice of the Martial Tao Prime Body meant that the Martial Tao Prime Body would cease to exist if he failed. Even so, it was worth the risk for the Martial Tao Prime Body to give it a shot. This choice was extremely important and would determine the future of the Martial Tao Prime Body. It was a path that no one could replicate. Although the Green Lotus True Body was in Heaven and Earth Academy, the inexplicable sense of danger had always existed. As his cultivation realm deepened and his combat strength became stronger, the sense of danger did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Su Zimo needed the Martial Tao Prime Body to advance further and grow to a sufficiently strong level. On the one hand, the martial Tao Prime body could better protect Tianhuang's sect if he was stronger. On the other hand, if the Green Lotus True body encountered any irreconcilable danger in the future, the martial Tao Prime body could become a way out for the Green Lotus True body. There was also one more thing. The martial Tao Prime body intended to head to the Great Wilderness. If he was only at the true martial realm, he was still lacking in terms of strength. He had to become stronger so that he had the confidence and foundation to look for Daiyu. He had to be qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Beneath the Builder Tree, the 19 Supremes supported their major Grotto-heavens and trapped the martial Tao Prime body within. They launched their final attacks and crushed and collided continuously. The 19 major Grotto-heavens contained 19 different dermic Taos and tempered the martial Tao Prime body continuously, letting out jarring sounds. The true martial Tao body seemed like it could fall apart at any moment. At that time, the bones and flesh of the martial Tao Prime body would be crushed into dust. In less than a few breaths, the martial Tao Prime body could not hold on any longer. If it was just one or two major Grotto-heavens, he could still fight them temporarily with his bloodline phenomenon and the heaven and earth furnace. But now that the 19 major Grotto-heavens were gathered with dermic Taos surging, even the true martial Tao body could not defend against it. Poof! 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 Blood began to fill the body of the martial Tao Prime body, and the true martial Tao body could not withstand the pressure. Under the suppression of the 19 major Grotto-heavens, his skin split, bones snapped, organs vibrated, and his Tao body was filled with a scarlet blood mist. Cough, cough, cough! The martial Tao Prime body coughed out large mouthfuls of blood as well. In reality, the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings had yet to use their full strength. At their cultivation realm, every single one of them had experienced countless life and death situations and had seen too many storms. They were extremely cautious. Although they attacked to suppress Desolate Martial, most of their attention was focused in the direction of the Fiend domain, afraid that anything could happen. Desolate Martial's action looked reckless on the surface. They believed that he must have other trump cards up his sleeves to explain his baffling actions. The group of Supreme Immortal Kings were worried that Emperor Bosun would be provoked if they suppressed Desolate Martial. Of the 20-odd Supreme Immortal Kings, a few of them did not participate because they had such considerations as well. However, as time passed by, although the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings had already severely injured Desolate Martial, the direction of the Fiend domain was still calm without any signs of Fiend cultivators, and everyone gradually relaxed. So, that's all to the power of Supreme Immortal Kings? Right then, the weak voice of the martial Tao Prime body sounded. Desolate Martial, you're still in the mood to mock us even now. You truly don't know what's good for you. Immortal King Long Night sneered and said in a deep voice. Everyone, don't worry. Attack with all your might and kill this fiend. Destroy his essence, spirit, and soul. That's right. Although Heavenly King Luotian was from the Buddhist monasteries, he was also murderous at the moment. The Hell Suppression tripod would only become ownerless once more after Desolate Martial was completely destroyed. That was the only way he could get his hands on it. Kill! The Supreme Immortal Kings hollered and channeled the dermic Taos of the Grotto-heavens with all their might. The power of the Grotto-heavens surged and suppressed the martial Tao Prime body. This time round, the martial Tao Prime body could no longer hold on. Bang! Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the true martial Tao body exploded and his flesh was destroyed. A tremendous power tore through the void and a large area of the void caved in, forming a dark black hole. The terrifying power released by the 19 major Grotto-heavens not only destroyed the martial Tao Prime body's physical body and essence spirit, it even penetrated a large void. The world returned to normal. The cultivators around the Builder Tree were dumbfounded as well with shocked expressions. The Fiend domain's Desolate Martial caused such a huge commotion at the 9 Firmament meet. He had just suppressed the paragons of the 2 ranking lists, killed the Supreme Arhat, and defeated 7 Immortal Kings. He was fearless and arrogant. And now, he ended up in such a state where he was killed by the combined forces of 19 supreme immortal kings without a corpse left. Not far away, Emoching seemed to have lost her soul when she saw that. Her face turned pale and her body swayed slightly, almost falling to the side. Thankfully, Yunju reacted in time and supported her hurriedly. Sigh. Yunju sighed gently and turned back to look in the direction of Su Zimo at the peak of the builder tree. This was Su Zimo's secret, and she could not say it explicitly, nor did she know how to console him. He died just like that. Jun Yu had a conflicted expression and a lost look in her eyes. Her interaction with Desolate Marshal was brief and they only had a short exchange of blows. However, the impression left behind by Desolate Marshal was way too deep. Up till this point her cultivation, Desolate Marshal was the first and only person who gave her the notion that she was helpless to resist. The existence of Desolate Marshal even made her feel despair. No matter how she cultivated, she would not be able to catch up to that person. Jun Yu did not have much prejudice towards the fiend domain and fiend cultivators. She felt a deep sense of pity for Desolate Marshal's death. Mother Desolate Marshal died just like that. Lin Luo could not believe it, and a look of sadness flashed through her eyes. Back when the siblings were trapped in Langfeng City, it was because of the appearance of Desolate Marshal that the two of them managed to escape. No matter where Desolate Marshal came from, he was their savior. Immortal Queen Ling Long sighed and shook her head gently, murmuring, "Should be dead." Even though Immortal Queen Ling Long could peer through the heavenly secrets, she could not figure out how Desolate Marshal could survive against the suppression of 19 major Grotto-heavens. Instinctively, she looked in the direction of the divine firmament immortal domain Su Zimo. At the same time, on the side of the fiend domain, Feng Cantian, Yen Beichen, Mingjin and Ji Yaoshua looked towards Su Zimo. Everyone who knew Desolate Marshal's true identity wanted an answer. Or rather, they were searching for a sliver of hope. At that moment, Su Zimo was staring fixedly at the dark void beneath the builder tree. His gaze intensified and a smile even appeared on his face. Success. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators around, Su Zimo would have reared his head and howled. After the Martial Dao Prime Body's body and essence spirit were destroyed by the 19 major Grotto-heavens, Su Zimo indeed lost the connection to the Martial Dao Prime Body. However, it was only momentary. In just a few breaths, he sensed the aura of the Martial Dao Prime Body once more. He could sense that the aura of the Martial Dao Prime Body was initially weak. However, it expanded rapidly and became stronger at an unimaginable speed. An even more terrifying Desolate Marshal was about to reappear. Chapter 2619 Chapter 2619 Dao Body and Dao Fruit. Chapter 2619 Dao Body and Dao Fruit. While the Martial Dao Prime Body was in seclusion in Avici, he did not stop deducing the dermic formulation of the Martial Dao. When he was about to come out of seclusion, he had already comprehended the key points, and was only missing some details and opportunities. In other words, it was unrealistic for the Martial Dao Prime Body to advance to the next realm of the Martial Dao within a short period of time. However, at the same time, because he had smelted and browsed through too many ancient books and sutras, another thought flashed through the mind of the Martial Dao Prime Body. Perhaps before he entered the next realm of the Martial Dao, he could make use of another method to condense his Grotto-heaven first, and become a fiend king. The appearance of the Martial Dao Prime Body was a variable that was beyond the 3 realms and 5 elements. The Prime Body's existence originated from the Martial Dao Fruit. Ordinary Dao fruits condensed the dermic Dao of cultivators and was the essence of their cultivation. There were countless inheritance secret skills and insights within. As for the Martial Dao Fruit, it condensed the essence of the Martial Dao. It was not only a noble augmentation, it also contained the will of the Martial Dao and the faith of all living beings. It was only through chance and the combination of various powers that a Dao fruit with life force was born. This was unprecedented and could not be replicated. Up till this point of his cultivation, the Prime Body had fused the martial Tao dermic formulation into his bones and flesh at the true martial realm to temper the true martial Tao body. However, in reality, the true martial Tao body was also a Tao fruit. The Tao body was the Tao fruit and vice versa, the two were one. The martial Tao Prime Body was the only one throughout history to be in such a situation. It was recorded in the dermic formulation of many inheritances that the prerequisite for condensing a Grotto-heaven was to shatter the Tao fruit. Through the tremendous power released by the shattering of the Tao fruit, the void outside the body would be smashed, creating a chamber that could connect to the heavens and the three realms. That was the Grotto-heaven. The process was extremely dangerous. If the power accumulated after the Tao fruit was shattered was insufficient, and one could not support a Grotto-heaven, it would mean that the breakthrough had failed. They would either die or settle for second best and reach the half-stepped Grotto-heaven realm. Although their lifespans would increase, they would never be able to advance to the Grotto-heaven realm. The idea of the martial Tao Prime Body was to shatter the true martial Tao body. The true martial Tao body was the fruit of the martial Tao. The shattering of the true martial Tao body meant that the Tao fruit would be shattered. At the same time, there was a chance that a chamber could be opened up and a Grotto-heaven could be condensed. This Grotto-heaven would originate from the martial Tao Prime Body, but the martial Tao Prime Body was a variable to begin with. In other words, if this Grotto-heaven was born, there was a high chance that it would exist beyond the three realms and five elements, turning into a variant Grotto-heaven. That thought was way too terrifying. Even if an ordinary Tao fruit was shattered, the process of breaking through to the Grotto-heaven realm was extremely dangerous. For a variable like the martial Tao Prime Body, it was unknown if the true martial Tao body would truly break through to the Grotto-heaven realm after shattering, just like a Tao fruit. If he failed, the martial Tao Prime Body would not even have the chance to settle for second best and enter the half-stepped Grotto-heaven realm. For ordinary perfected immortals to advance to the Grotto-heaven realm, they merely had to shatter their Tao fruits. However, what the martial Tao Prime Body had to shatter was the true martial Tao body that he had condensed with his dermic Tao. If he failed, his essence, spirit, and soul would be destroyed. Furthermore, his true martial Tao body had already been cultivated to the perfected stage, and every single move he made could even break through the minor Grotto-heavens of ordinary immortal kings. Even ordinary Grotto-heaven spirit treasures could not injure his body. How could such a true martial Tao body be shattered? It was an idea fraught with difficulties and a slim chance of survival. After pondering for a long time, the martial Tao Prime Body decided to take the risk. Although it was a risk, he was not unprepared. First, he could only rely on external forces to break through the true martial Tao body. Yet, the external force could not be too strong. If an emperor were to release the power of the world and destroy the true martial Tao body, even his dermic Tao would be destroyed and refined. There was no need to talk about condensing a Grotto-heaven. He would be killed into nothingness before anything could be formed. The safest option was for supreme immortal kings to make use of the power of their major Grotto-heavens to destroy the true martial Tao body bit by bit. Furthermore, one supreme immortal king was not enough. There had to be at least 10 of them. Second, after the true martial Tao body was shattered, there was actually still a sliver of hope of revival. The bloodline of the true martial Tao body contained the blood of the dragon phoenix. Therefore, the body of the martial Tao Prime Body contained the final innate divine power of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the power of the phoenix nirvana. However, it was far from enough if he was merely relying on this innate divine power alone. The Phoenix Nirvana had a 90% chance of failure to begin with. Furthermore, this innate divine power might not be able to unleash its full potential against the suppression of major Grotto-heavens. Third and most importantly, the trajectory of his deduction had to be correct. The true martial Tao body had to be the Tao fruit such that the destruction of the Tao body could truly shatter the void and condense a Grotto-heaven. All in all, the 9 firmament meet was the best opportunity for the martial Tao Prime Body to give this idea a shot. There were enough supreme immortal kings at the 9 firmament meet. Furthermore, the venue of the 9 firmament meet was near the Builder Tree. Once a huge battle broke out, and his true martial Tao body was shattered to evolve into a Grotto-heaven. This Grotto-heaven could devour and absorb the life force of the Builder Tree to extend his life. Beneath the Builder Tree, Immortal King Qin Yang and the other 18 Supreme Immortal Kings observed the Fiend Domain for any activity after they destroyed Desolate Marshal's body and essence spirit. They only heaved a sigh of relief when they did not find anything unusual. Immortal King Long Night sneered. Desolate Marshal is so arrogant that I thought he had something up his sleeves. To think that he's just an idiot who doesn't know his place. Fufu. Immortal King Qin Yang chuckled. This lad went on a massacre in the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain before escaping back to Avici. He really thinks that he can do whatever he wants just because he has the Hell Suppression tripod. He didn't know that once we joined forces to seal the void, his Hell Suppression tripod would end up as a display piece. At the mention of the Hell Suppression tripod, the gazes of the Supreme Immortal Kings landed near the pierced void where the Hell Suppression tripod hovered. Amitabha. Heavenly King Luotian chanted his Buddhist proclamation softly and made a move first, arriving before the Hell Suppression tripod to snatch it away. Monk Luotian, aren't you way too anxious? Immortal King Qin Yang and the others made a move one after another as well. The 19 major grotto heavens were propped up once more and collided in midair. Hold on. Stop first. Suddenly, Heavenly King Luotian frowned and hollered. Why? What are you up to, monk? Immortal King Qiping sneered. The void here has already been sealed. No one can dream of leaving until we resolve the matter of the Hell Suppression tripod. Heavenly King Luotian said hurriedly. There's something strange about this Hell Suppression tripod. I can't lift it. How is that possible? In a flash, Immortal King Long Night arrived beside the Hell Suppression tripod and reached out to grab it. The Hell Suppression tripod did not budge at all, as though it was sucked in by the dark black hole behind it. It was only at that moment that the Immortal Kings noticed something unusual. Why hasn't this void healed after so long? Immortal King Qin Yang narrowed his eyes and asked. Although a fight between Immortal Kings could shatter the void, due to the circulation of heaven and earth laws, the void would recover quickly and recover to its original state. But now, the pitch-black void had yet to recover. The Immortal Kings glared at the dark black hole not far away and their gazes froze. Suddenly, their expressions changed. In the depths of the black hole, a figure appeared faintly, as though it was one with the black hole. You'll have to ask for my permission if you want to snatch my tripod. A shocking voice sounded from the black hole. Chapter 2620 Chapter 2620 Grotto-heaven Transformation, Supreme Suppression. Chapter 2620 Grotto-heaven Transformation, Supreme Suppression. That voice. The Immortal Kings glared at the dark void not far away with bewildered expressions. The immortals and monks around the Builder Tree were dumbfounded with a look of disbelief on their faces. Desolate Marshal. That was the voice of Desolate Marshal from the Fiend Domain. How was that possible? Hadn't Desolate Marshal's body and essence spirit been destroyed by the combined forces of 19 Supreme Immortal Kings? Even the void was penetrated, but Desolate Marshal was still alive. And Mo Qing had a delighted expression and clenched her fists instinctively. She looked at the figure that gradually appeared in the dark void and did not dare to look away. It was as though she was afraid that the figure would disappear once more. Yun Zhu heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Su Zimo, who was on the peak of the Builder Tree, with a hint of reproach. He seems to have become stronger? Jun Yu looked at the dark void and murmured softly. On the side of the Fiend Domain, Feng Cantian and the others finally relaxed and smiled. Although Desolate Marshal was only the Martial Dao Prime Body, if he were to die, there might be a huge commotion in Tianhuang's sect as well. On the peak of the Builder Tree, Immortal Queen Ling Long heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Desolate Marshal was fine. However, she looked at the dark void with a confused expression. Even with her experience and knowledge, she could not see through the dermic formulation used by the Martial Dao Prime Body to revive. She could only roughly determine that after this change, the martial Dao Prime Body had already created a Grotto-heaven that was unique to him. Beneath the Builder Tree, the martial Dao Prime Body wore a silver mask and walked out slowly from the dark void. He wore purple robes and looked no different from before. However, Immortal King Qin Yang and the others could clearly sense that desolate martial had turned even more terrifying. They could sense the aura of a Grotto-heaven from desolate martial. Grotto-heaven realm? The Immortal Kings frowned with grim expressions. The dark Grotto-heaven on desolate martial's body fluctuated sinisterly, as though it was one with him and was faintly visible. How could this be? The Immortal Kings were puzzled and did not attack rashly out of caution. The Grotto-heaven conjured by desolate martial seemed to be extremely different from the Grotto-heaven they knew. Under normal circumstances, the shattering of a cultivator's Dao fruit should happen outside of their bodies. After all, a shattered Dao fruit would release such a tremendous power that it could even penetrate the void. If it was placed in one's body, it would be enough to blow it up to ashes. One would die even before they could condense a Grotto-heaven. In other words, when cultivators advanced to the Immortal King realm, their Grotto-heavens were condensed outside their bodies. Although the Grotto-heavens were outside their bodies, it was closely related to them. They could make use of the Grotto-heavens to connect to the heavens and absorb heaven and earth essence chi. However, desolate martial's Grotto-heaven seemed to be within his body? A Grotto-heaven that was within his body? In reality, the Grotto-heaven of the martial Dao Prime Body was not outside or within his body. To be precise, the martial Dao Prime Body was the Grotto-heaven. The new martial Dao Prime Body was already one with this Grotto-heaven. The martial Dao Prime Body had reappeared in the world after transforming into a Grotto-heaven. In terms of the martial Dao, the Prime Body was still at the true martial realm and the level of a perfected true martial Dao body. However, the Prime Body made use of the uniqueness of the true martial Dao body, and used another method to condense a Grotto-heaven first to become a Fiend King. That was because his Dao body was his Dao fruit. Therefore, this was a path that no one else could replicate. Immortal King Long Night narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Desolate Martial, you are indeed capable to be able to survive. From the looks of it, you seem to have benefited from this misfortune?" Amitabha. Heavenly King Luotian said slowly, "Since Desolate Martial is still alive, we'll just kill him once more." "That's right." With just a few words, the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings propped up their major Grotto-heavens once more and charged towards the martial Dao Prime Body with an aura of aggressiveness. "You still want to kill me?" The martial Dao Prime Body looked at the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings charging over, and shook his head gently, saying indifferently, "You guys are way too naive." The moment he said that, the martial Dao Prime Body counterattacked as well. Without any unnecessary movements, he punched towards the incoming Heavenly King Luotian. Not only did that punch contain the dermic formulation of the martial Dao, it also contained the power of this new Grotto-heaven. Boom! The fist of the martial Dao Prime Body collided with Heavenly King Luotian's major Grotto-heaven. In reality, this was also a collision between the Grotto-heaven of the martial Dao Prime Body and Heavenly King Luotian's major Grotto-heaven. The world trembled as though it was letting out a tragic cry. Both parties were caught in a stalemate in midair for a moment, and Heavenly King Luotian's expression changed. His major Grotto-heaven could not hold on any longer and faint cracks started appearing, threatening to collapse at any moment. "How is that possible? Desolate Martial has only just formed a Grotto-heaven, so it should merely be a minor Grotto-heaven. Yet my major Grotto-heaven is unable to defend against it." Heavenly King Luotian was shocked and furious. The reason why the martial Dao Prime Body could release such an attack was not only because of a minor Grotto-heaven. The reason for his terrifying might was the combination of his perfected true martial Dao body and the minor Grotto-heaven. Alongside his first punch, the martial Dao Prime Body continued releasing punches in succession. There were a total of 19 for the 19 Immortal Kings present. At the perfected true martial realm, the martial Dao Prime Body could suppress the minor Grotto-heaven Immortal Kings. Now that the martial Dao Prime Body had transformed into a Grotto-heaven and controlled the power of the Grotto-heaven realm, his combat strength had increased exponentially, and he could completely suppress the Supreme Immortal King's present. The moment he transformed into the Grotto-heaven, the situation of the battle had changed completely. Boom! 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 A series of explosions shook the world. The void beneath the Builder Tree tore continuously. The Grotto-heavens of the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings were shaken and shattered by the martial Tao Prime body. They could not defend against it at all. How can he be so strong? The 19 Supreme Immortal Kings were shocked. Although the Supreme Immortal Kings surrounded the martial Tao Prime body in the middle, in reality, they were already facing a situation where they could collapse at any moment. As long as one of them was afraid and chose to retreat, the other Supreme Immortal Kings might withdraw as well. The 19 Supreme Immortal Kings were still hesitant. Desolate Marshal had just entered the Grotto-heaven realm after all, while they had been famous for a long time. Furthermore, it was a situation of 19 Supreme Immortal Kings against him. It was truly not good for them to retreat just like that. While Immortal King Qin Yang and the others were hesitating, the martial Tao Prime body did not give them much time to think. Devour! The martial Tao Prime body opened his Grotto-heaven and hollered softly. His figure seemed to have vanished and a gigantic and strange Grotto-heaven appeared in midair. It spun continuously and tore apart the 19 surrounding major Grotto-heavens. Against the counterattack of the martial Tao Prime body, the 19 major Grotto-heavens were already on the verge of collapse. Now that they were affected by this tremendous suction power, they could not hold on at all and collapsed completely. An endless stream of Grotto-heaven power was devoured by the dark Grotto-heaven of the martial Tao Prime body. Some of the damaged Grotto-heaven fragments were even devoured by the dark Grotto-heaven of the martial Tao Prime body. Ordinary Grotto-heavens could reach the heavens and connect to the three realms. They could absorb the essence chi in the world wildly, remove the impurities and refine them, allowing the Grotto-heavens to gradually grow. However, the Grotto-heaven of the martial Tao Prime body was a variable to begin with and was already beyond the three realms. It was also difficult for this Grotto-heaven to grow by absorbing heaven and earth essence chi. It could only transform by devouring other Grotto-heavens to absorb and refine their dermic Taos. Chapter 26-21 Chapter 26-21 Peerless Ferocity. Chapter 26-21 Peerless Ferocity. Immortal King Qin Yang and the others suddenly realized that the Grotto-heavens that they had condensed were being devoured by the dark Grotto-heaven that Desolate Marshal had transformed into. Their major Grotto-heavens were being torn apart. The Immortal Kings were shocked. Desolate Marshal's Grotto-heaven could devour their major Grotto-heavens. Throughout history, there had been countless paragons and monster incarnates. There were also some monster incarnates who cultivated unprecedented and terrifying Grotto-heavens that possessed devouring powers. However, even those Grotto-heavens could only devour the divine powers, secret skills, Grotto-heaven powers, divine weapons or dermic treasures of others. There had never been any immortal king who could devour the Grotto-heavens of other immortal kings whole like Desolate Marshal. All of their Grotto-heavens contained the profoundness of their cultivations. It could be said that every immortal king was practically the god within their Grotto-heavens. Devouring the Grotto-heaven of the other party meant that he wanted to devour the dermic Tao contained in the Grotto-heaven. However, the dermic Tao in every Grotto-heaven was different. If one devoured another person's dermic Tao into their Grotto-heaven forcefully, it would mean that an intense dermic Tao conflict would break out within his Grotto-heaven. This was equivalent to shifting the battlefield into his Grotto-heaven. If he could not suppress it, his Grotto-heaven would explode and his cultivation would vanish into thin air before the other party even attacked. In the top auction houses and trading houses of the upper world, there would indeed be some priceless treasures such as the Grotto-heaven fragments of fallen immortal kings. Those Grotto-heaven fragments contained the dermic Taos of the fallen immortal kings. For some Grotto-heaven realm experts, they could make use of a long period of time to gradually digest and smelt such Grotto-heaven fragments to comprehend the dermic Taos without much conflict. However, the way Desolate Marshal was forcefully devouring their Grotto-heavens was an unprecedented and frenzied act. Furthermore, Desolate Marshal was not only devouring a single major Grotto-heaven of one supreme immortal king, he wanted to devour 19 major Grotto-heavens of 19 supreme immortal kings in one go. "Aren't you afraid of biting off more than you can chew?" Immortal King Long Night shouted with a furious expression. They were still alive and in their peak condition. The Grotto-heavens did not only contain their dermic das, but also their powerful wills. Desolate Marshal was way too domineering and unreasonable. Not only did he want to devour their dermic das, he wanted to subdue their wills as well. Heavenly King Luoshun channeled his essence spirit, and the major Grotto-heaven behind him shone with a Buddhist light that was filled with a blinding golden radiance. "Since this fiend wants to die, let's fulfill his wish." The 19 supreme immortal kings channeled their blood chi and forced themselves to hold on to their major Grotto-heavens while continuing to exert pressure on the Martial Dao Prime body. The figure of the Martial Dao Prime body was faintly visible in his dark Grotto-heaven. He did not repel any of the 19 major Grotto-heavens and devoured them with all his might. If it was an ordinary Grotto-heaven, it would indeed not be able to devour the Grotto-heaven of other immortal kings directly. However, the Grotto-heaven of the Martial Dao Prime body was a variable and was not within the 3 realms or restricted by the laws of this world. The Grotto-heaven of the Martial Dao Prime body could not refine 19 major Grotto-heavens in a short period of time. However, his Grotto-heaven was like a bottomless abyss that could absorb everything. He would first absorb the dermic das of the 19 major Grotto-heavens forcefully before refining them slowly in the future. Both parties were only in a stalemate for a moment. The expressions of Immortal King Qin Yang and the others turned terrible. When Desolate Marshal devoured their different dermic das, his dark Grotto-heaven did not explode. Instead, it became even more terrifying. The radius of the Grotto-heaven became larger, and its devouring power was even stronger. Immortal King Qin Yang and the others could clearly sense the dermic das contained in their Grotto-heavens weakening alongside their strength. If this continued, their hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation might be devoured by Desolate Marshal. In fact, their major Grotto-heavens might even drop in cultivation realm and be relegated to become minor Grotto-heavens. This was a loss that they could not endure. Retreat! That thought flashed through the mind of Immortal King Qin Yang. He could not let this drag on any longer. Otherwise, their major Grotto-heavens would be devoured cleanly before Desolate Marshal's Grotto-heaven even exploded. He had to leave as soon as possible, while he still had the strength to break free. Desolate Marshal's dermic Tao was way too evil. The only people who could suppress him were probably peak immortal kings with perfected Grotto-heavens. At that thought, Immortal King Qin Yang retreated and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, hold on first. I'll send a message to Divine Firmament Palace." The moment the Immortal King Qin Yang retreated, the other Supreme Immortal Kings retreated before he could finish. The combined forces of the 19 Supreme Immortal Kings dissipated instantly. The figure of the Martial Dao Prime body reappeared and many mysterious and terrifying dermic Dao spewed from his body, transforming into countless blinding runes that circled around him as his aura surged. His gaze was burning as he locked onto the aura of Immortal King Long Night. Instantly, he closed in and punched forward, tearing through the air. The major Grotto-heaven of Immortal King Long Night was torn into pieces by the Martial Dao Prime body and its aura was weak. Right now, it could not defend against this forceful punch of the Martial Dao Prime body at all. Bang! Boom! That punch was earth-shaking. The major Grotto-heaven of Immortal King Long Night collapsed completely. The fist of the Martial Dao Prime body charged right in and broke through the major Grotto-heaven of Immortal King Long Night. The fist still had strength left and struck the chest of Immortal King Long Night. The overwhelming and terrifying power shattered the body of Immortal King Long Night instantly. Blood filled the air. The immortals and monks on the peak of the Builder Tree were shocked and horrified. Immortal King Long Night was not an ordinary immortal king, but a supreme immortal king with a major Grotto-heaven. But now, his body was shattered by a single punch from Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. The other 18 supreme immortal kings had wary expressions and did not dare to advance. If that was the case for the supreme immortal kings, the remaining 100-odd ordinary immortal kings were even more afraid of attacking. The Fiend Domain's desolate marshal had just condensed his Grotto-heaven, but he was already so domineering and ferocious. He suppressed the immortal kings of the two domains until they could not raise their heads and dodged him. The reason why the martial Tao Prime Body targeted Immortal King Long Night was not because they had any deep feud. It was because the Grand Pure Jade Manual was now in the hands of Immortal King Long Night. As a supreme Immortal King Long Night had expected that his body and bloodline would not be able to withstand the punch of the martial Tao Prime Body. The moment the fist of the martial Tao Prime Body descended, his essence spirit attached itself to the Grand Pure Jade Manual and fled into the distance with a ball of essence blood. Indeed, his body was shattered by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime Body. The tremendous power charged towards his essence spirit and essence blood. However, it was dissipated by the power of the seal on the Grand Pure Jade Manual. Immortal King Long Night made use of the essence blood to condense his body rapidly and tear through the void, prepared to escape back to the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain. The martial Tao Prime Body chased relentlessly like a shadow. The moment Immortal King Long Night tore through the void, the martial Tao Prime Body had already caught up to him. Right then, a change happened. Chapter 2622 Awakening of the Builder Tree. 2622 Awakening of the Builder Tree. In the deep void torn apart by Immortal King Long Night, an evil power suddenly burst forth. A ghastly green light flashed and disappeared, entering the glabella of Immortal King Long Night. The attention of Immortal King Long Night was entirely focused on the martial Tao Prime Body chasing after him. He had not expected that a fatal killing intent would be hidden in the void before him. At the same time, he had not expected that apart from Desolate Marshal, there was someone else who would dare to kill him at the Nine Firmament meet. Immortal King Long Night was in a state of panic to begin with after being hunted by the martial Tao Prime Body. Coupled with the fact that he was caught off guard, he was killed by the ghastly green light that suddenly flashed through the depths of the void. A supreme Immortal King died on the spot. The Immortal Kings were shocked. Up till this point of the Nine Firmament meet, although the cultivators on the perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings suffered immense losses and even the Supreme Arhat was killed by Desolate Marshal, no Immortal King expert died. The death of an Immortal King was extremely important. Furthermore, a Supreme Immortal King had died. In fact, an Emperor might be activated with the death of a Supreme Immortal King. The martial Tao Prime Body frowned slightly and suddenly stopped in his tracks. He felt an extremely dangerous aura from the existence hidden in the deep void. There was a high chance that this expert had already surpassed the Grotto-heaven realm, and was at the Emperor realm. That was also the reason why he could kill Immortal King Long Night cleanly before disappearing rapidly. Who was this person? How long had he been here? Was it an enemy of Immortal King Long Night? Was he here for the Grand Pure Jade Manual, or were there some other reasons? What puzzled the martial Tao Prime Body the most was that the ghastly green aura seemed familiar, and made him feel extremely disgusted. Could it be the witch race? At the level of an Immortal King, it was already difficult for them to die. The fact that the intruder could kill Immortal King Long Night so cleanly was proof of how terrifying his methods were. The martial Tao Prime Body did not continue chasing. He had completely lost track of the mysterious expert's aura. This person laid in ambush here and vanished after killing Immortal King Long Night, as though he had never appeared. His spirit perception warned him repeatedly. He could not linger here. Even without the reminder of his spirit perception, the martial Tao Prime Body was prepared to retreat. Not far behind him, a powerful life form was awakening. The Builder Tree. Perhaps due to the commotion of the Nine Firmament meet, or for some other reason, the Builder Tree had already awakened in advance. Given the power of the Builder Tree, apart from emperors, all the Immortal King experts present had to avoid it. Furthermore, there was a high chance that the death of Immortal King Long Night would alarm the Immortal Emperor of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain. Even with the current capabilities of the martial Tao Prime Body, he could not take on an Emperor expert head-on. He had already achieved his goal of using the Supreme Immortal Kings to shatter his true martial Dao body. There was no need for him to linger here. Hurry and leave! Return to Tianhuang's sect immediately! Before the martial Dao prime body left, he sent a voice transmission to Feng Cantian using his spirit consciousness. Feng Cantian had been paying attention to the commotion the entire time, and had already sensed the violent aura released by the Builder Tree. Once this ancient divine tree was awakened, it did not matter if one was from the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain, Pure Land of Bliss, or Fiend Domain. Within its territory, any living being that barged in would be viewed by it as an anomaly, a provocation and threat. When Feng Cantian heard the voice transmission from the martial Dao prime body, he was extremely decisive and tore through the void, bringing Yen Beiqin, Mingjin and the others into the spatial tunnel and disappearing. On the other side, the Builder Tree was completely awakened and released a violent life force. As though they could sense the living beings around them, thick branches danced like green anacondas. They were filled with a resplendent glow and fell into a frenzied rage. Piak! 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 A few branches swept past and whipped the crowd of more than 100 Immortal King experts. Instantly, more than 10 Immortal Kings were sent flying and their bodies exploded. An Immortal King released his Grotto-heaven, but it was shattered by a tree branch and collapsed instantly. Ordinary Immortal Kings were helpless against the Builder Tree. If that was the case for Immortal Kings, all the perfected Immortals and Arhats present would have to die once all the branches of the Builder Tree started flailing. Retreat! Immortal King Qin Yang let out a long howl. Even with his capabilities, he could not care about too many people. He could only bring the 3 great fairies and the other perfected immortal paragons of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain who were closest to him to break through the void, prepared to escape back to the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. As for the thousands of perfected immortals of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain on the peak of the Builder Tree, he could not care less about them. Immortal Queen Linglong was on the peak of the Builder Tree the entire time, and did not descend. At that moment, she brought Lin Lei and Lin Luo with her, and shifted her gaze towards Su Zimo. She sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. Don't worry, I'll take you out of here first. All the Immortal Kings could not care less, and could only bring along the perfected Immortals and Arhats around them. They shattered the void one after another, prepared to escape from this place. However, right then, a gigantic green halo burst forth from the body of the Builder Tree and spread rapidly, enveloping the surrounding 50 kilometers. The voids that were broken by the Immortal Kings were repaired instantly under the envelopment of the green halo, and the spatial tunnels vanished as well. The voids healed and the spatial tunnels were gone, leaving the cultivators of the 2 domains stranded. Pissed! The Immortal Kings gasped and were secretly alarmed. What was this Builder Tree trying to do? Was this divine tree trying to keep them all here and start a massacre? Initially, the martial Dao prime body could have left right away. However, he suddenly paused when he saw the green halo emitted by the Builder Tree. Unlike the panic and fear of others, the martial Dao prime body looked at the green halo and seemed to have thought of something. Purple flames danced in his eyes as he pondered. Piak! A tree branch was flung down and tore through the void wildly, smashing onto the Builder Tree mountain range, causing the entire mountain range to collapse. Dozens of perfected immortals and arhats on the mountain range who could not dodge in time were whipped to death by the Builder Tree's branch. Their essence, spirits, and souls were destroyed. As for the thousands of thick branches on the Builder Tree, they were already raised and could descend at any moment. At that time, even the entire Builder Tree mountain range might be destroyed, let alone the many perfected immortals and arhats present. Most likely, only the Immortal King experts could escape from the attack range of the Builder Tree with the help of their movement techniques. Everyone else was going to die here. The paragons and monster incarnates of the 2 domains were gathered at the 9 firmament meet this time round. If the perfected immortals and arhats of the 2 domains were to die here, it would cause irreparable losses for the 9 firmament immortal domain and Pure Land of Bliss. The current situation had already spiraled out of hand and was beyond the control of the Immortal Kings. Now that the Builder Tree had awakened in advance, all the immortal kings only wanted to protect themselves and escape from this place. None of them could care about the martial Tao prime body anymore. Right then, an unstoppable might came from the direction of the nine firmament immortal domain and enveloped the builder tree. On the other side, in the direction of the pure land of bliss, a resplendent and divine golden light passed through the layers of clouds and tore through the firmaments, scattering down and dissipating the green halo around the builder tree. Chapter 26-23 2623 Appearance of Emperors. 2623 Appearance of Emperors. In the direction of the nine firmament immortal domain, a figure with a terrifying aura appeared slowly. It seemed to be looking down on the world and was unparalleled, emitting an endless might. Against such a majestic might, even the immortal kings and heavenly kings present could not defend against it, let alone the perfected immortals and arhats. An immortal emperor had appeared. Suzimo focused his gaze. The facial features of this immortal emperor were similar to Prince Jinsu. If he was not wrong, this should be Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament. Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament stood in midair and his tremendous might faced the builder tree from afar, blocking the thousands of branches temporarily, as though he was communicating with something. However, the builder tree had already fallen into a berserk state, and did not give Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament any face at all, releasing an even more terrifying might. The thousands of branches of the builder tree broke free from the control of Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament instantly, and enveloped in the direction of the builder tree mountain range. The builder tree's thousands of thick branches were lush and covered the skies. A large shadow enveloped down in a suffocating manner. Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament's expression was terrible. Even with his combat strength, he could not fight against the enraged builder tree. In a flash, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament made a decision. Waving his robes, he protected the cultivators of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain and retreated into the distance. Given his strength, if he chose to protect all the cultivators from the nine Firmament Immortal Domain and pure land of bliss at the peak of the builder tree, he would definitely be severely injured by the builder tree as well. As an immortal emperor in charge of an entire immortal domain, there was no way he would take that risk. It was already extremely benevolent of him to protect the immortals of the Grand Firmament Immortal Domain. When the other cultivators of the two domains saw that, they quickly realized the intentions of Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament. All of them had been heartlessly abandoned. The immortals and monks were indignant. However, although they harbored resentment, they did not dare to offend Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament in any way. Furthermore, they would not get the chance either. The attack of the builder tree had already descended and cultivators of the two domains on the peak of the builder tree were about to die on the spot. Right then, the blinding golden light in the direction of the pure land of bliss shifted rapidly, and shone on the immortals and monks on the peak of the builder tree through the gaps in the leaves. Everyone seemed to be covered in a layer of sacred gold foil that shone brightly. Bang! Boom! Thousands of branches smashed down with a series of deafening bangs. The builder tree mountain range beneath everyone had already collapsed completely. However, the immortals and monks were shrouded by a layer of divine golden light that blocked most of the damage released by the builder tree. Unknowingly, a middle-aged monk was shielding everyone from the builder tree alone, protecting all of them. An emperor of the Buddhist monasteries had descended. Compared to the builder tree, the middle-aged monk seemed incomparably tiny. His body was not even as thick as a branch of the builder tree. However, at that moment, to everyone, the back view of the middle-aged monk seemed extremely tall and mighty. It was especially so when they compared him to Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament. The difference was obvious. Patrons, hurry and retreat! I won't be able to hold on for much longer. The middle-aged monk's body swayed slightly and his voice turned hoarse, as though he had suffered quite a blow. The immortals and monks seemed to have woken up from a dream as they hurriedly circulated their movement techniques and fled into the distance. The golden light of the middle-aged monk destroyed the green halo released by the builder tree previously. This meant that the immortal king experts could tear through the void and leave this place at any moment. When the martial Tao prime body saw the two emperors appear, he did not dare to hesitate and tore through the void hurriedly, entering a spatial tunnel. Thereafter, he summoned the Hell Suppression tripod rapidly, and guarded it behind him before glancing in the direction of the middle-aged monk. As an Emperor expert, there was naturally a chance that the middle-aged monk might attack him. The reason why he summoned the Hell Suppression tripod was to prevent any accidents. For some unknown reason, perhaps because the middle-aged monk was too busy facing the Builder Tree or because he was injured and was unwilling to bother about the Martial Tao Prime body. In any case, from the moment the Martial Tao Prime body tore through the void to the moment he left this place, the middle-aged monk did not attack him. However, the moment the Martial Tao Prime body turned back and looked at the middle-aged monk, he realized that the latter was looking at him as well. Their eyes met. For some unknown reason, the Martial Tao Prime body suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. The middle-aged monk had handsome features and a benevolent expression that left a favorable impression. However, the Martial Tao Prime body was certain that he had never seen this person before. How could that be? Where did that sense of familiarity come from? The Martial Tao Prime body was not the only one. The Green Lotus True body was also reminiscing. Su Zimo believed that the sense of familiarity that flashed through the Martial Tao Prime body's mind earlier on was definitely not without reason. The cultivators of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss made use of the time bought by the middle-aged monk to finally escape from the attack range of the Builder Tree. The cultivators had pale expressions as they looked in the direction of the Builder Tree with lingering fear. If not for the appearance of the Emperor of the Buddhist monasteries, everyone present would have been buried at the peak of the Builder Tree beneath the rubble. As expected of someone from the Buddhist monasteries. He's compassionate and sacrificed himself to save others. He's truly on a different level from us. Impressive. That's right. This accomplished monk saved all of us. We shall definitely remember this life-saving grace and repay him till our deaths. I wonder who this Emperor of the Buddhist monasteries is. What's his dharmic title? After escaping, many cultivators looked at the middle-aged monk in the distance, and could not help but discuss softly. Zen Master Huiwen pondered for a moment, and said thoughtfully, "This senior looks like Heavenly Lord Six Brahma." After the middle-aged monk appeared, his back was facing the immortals and monks, and no one could see him clearly. Before long, the middle-aged monk escaped unscathed from the Builder Tree and arrived here. Everyone could clearly see that the kasaya on the middle-aged monk's chest was stained with blood. It was clear that he was injured after fighting against the Builder Tree. It's truly Heavenly Lord Six Brahma! Zen Master Huiwen's heart skipped a beat when he saw the middle-aged monk. Delighted, he hurried forward and clasped his palms together, bowing. "Greetings, Senior Six Brahma!" He was not the only one. A few other heavenly kings of the Buddhist monasteries recognized the middle-aged monk and hurried forward to greet him as well. They were surprised and delighted with deep respect in their eyes. When the other monks saw that, they no longer had any doubts and knelt down hurriedly with elated expressions, chanting the name of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled a piece of information that Lu Ping had told him back in Heaven and Earth Academy. It was said that after Emperor Bo's son appeared and killed a few heavenly kings in succession, he disappeared and only Heavenly King Six Brahma survived. Heavenly King Six Brahma was enlightened after the calamity. He advanced courageously in Buddhism and became an emperor, now known as Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. This accomplished monk even opened a forum in the Buddhist monasteries to preach sutras and spread dharmic Tao widely. He attracted countless Buddhist monks and had a huge impact in recent years. Su Zimo frowned and fell into deep thought. It was a nagging feeling, as though he had neglected something. Chapter 26-24 26-24 Bo's Son's Ambition 26-24 Bo's Son's Ambition. At that moment, Su Zimo was not standing with the cultivators of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. Instead, he was standing beside Immortal Queen Ling Long. Immortal Queen Ling Long did not notice Su Zimo's abnormality. Instead, she looked in the direction of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma and lamented. As expected of an accomplished monk from the Buddhist monasteries of the Pure Land of Bliss, It's admirable that he can be so magnanimous. That's right. At the side, Lin Luo whispered as well. Compared to this accomplished monk, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament is far inferior. It's not merely in terms of their levels as human beings. The cultivation realm of Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma seems to be above Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament as well. Immortal Queen Ling Long pondered for a moment. Yes. I heard that this senior has just entered the Emperor realm not long ago. The fact that he's able to cultivate to this point is admirable indeed. Su Zimo was in deep thought and tried his best to recall. When he heard the words of Immortal Queen Ling Long, a thought flashed through his mind. Psst! Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he gasped. He finally recalled why the martial Dao Prime Body felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he saw Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma. It was because the martial Dao Prime Body had experienced that familiarity from Emperor Bo Sun before. Initially, Su Zimo had not connected Emperor Bo Sun to Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma of the Pure Land of Bliss. However, at that moment, when he recalled the information Lu Ping told him and what Immortal Queen Ling Long had just said, everything seemed to make sense. Back when Emperor Bo Sun appeared, the heavenly kings of the Buddhist monasteries that surrounded him died, including the true Heavenly King 6 Brahma. The reason why Heavenly King 6 Brahma did not die was because the Heavenly King 6 Brahma that appeared later on was transformed by Emperor Bo Sun. Others might not have the ability, but Emperor Bo Sun cultivated both the Buddhism and Fiend Das. Many years ago, he had already achieved extremely deep attainments in Buddhism. Now that he had broken free from Avici, his comprehension of Buddhism had probably reached an unimaginable realm. If Emperor Bo Sun were to transform into a Buddha, apart from a great emperor, there was probably no one else who could see through him. That could also explain why Emperor Bo Sun seemed to have vanished from the world after he appeared and there was no news of him in the Fiend domain. That was because Emperor Bo Sun was not in the Fiend domain at all. He had long transformed into Heavenly King 6 Brahma of the Buddhist monasteries and cultivated openly in the Pure Land of Bliss. Gaining enlightenment after his life and death experience was naturally just a facade. Emperor Bo Sun was an expert among emperors to begin with. All he had to do was suppress and conceal his original cultivation realm before revealing it slowly. In the eyes of others, it was because he gained a blessing in disguise to become an emperor. Emperor Bo Sun's true combat strength was definitely far above Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament, so he could naturally defend against the attacks of the Builder Tree. In fact, Su Zimo suspected that the struggle demonstrated by Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma earlier on as well as the bloodstains on his chest were merely intentional acts of Emperor Bo Sun. That was the only way he could subdue the hearts of others. In reality, the effect of Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma's performance earlier on was indeed not bad. It was not just the monks of the Pure Land of Bliss. The cultivators on the side of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain were in awe of Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma as well. Even Immortal Queen Ling Long praised Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma endlessly. Su Zimo had a grim expression. If his deduction was not wrong and Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma was Emperor Bo Sun, the fact that Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma was opening a forum in the Buddhist monasteries to preach sutras and spread Dharmic Tao was enough to send shivers down one's spine. Back then, Emperor Bo Sun had already unified the Fiend domain. He was surrounded and killed by emperor experts of the 2 domains when he tried to conquer the Pure Land of Bliss. Now that he had reappeared, he hid his identity and transformed into a Buddha. There was a high chance that he was after the entire Pure Land of Bliss. If the influence of Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma in the Pure Land of Bliss grew and eventually reached its peak, he would have countless believers and monks under his lead. Bo Sun's ambitions were frightening. In that case, there was a high chance that the Pure Land of Bliss would turn into a second Fiend domain. Once cultivators fell into blind faith and worship, they would no longer possess rationality. The difference of whether they were Buddhas or fiends would lie on a single thought. At that time, there was a high chance that the Pure Land of Bliss would fall into an endless massacre and blood would flow like rivers. Su Zimo did not dare to continue thinking. Zimo, what's wrong? Right then, immortal Queen Ling Long seemed to have noticed something amiss with Su Zimo and turned around, asking softly, "Senior, you have to be careful." Just as Su Zimo was about to reveal the identity of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma to immortal Queen Ling Long, he felt a searing gaze. Instinctively, Su Zimo looked over and met with the eyes of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. Those eyes were filled with benevolence and wisdom. However, at that moment, there was a strange look in his eyes when he looked at Su Zimo. Psst! Su Zimo shuddered and suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. His hairs stood on end and his scalp prickled. That gaze... Heavenly Lord Six Brahma seemed to have already sensed something, and that gaze was a warning for him to watch his words. Given Emperor Bo Sun's capabilities, nobody could save Su Zimo if Emperor Bo Sun wanted to kill him right now. "Are you all right?" Noticing the change in Su Zimo's expression, immortal Queen Ling Long frowned slightly. She followed Su Zimo's gaze and looked at Heavenly Lord Six Brahma, who was not far away. At that moment, Heavenly Lord Six Brahma had already shifted his gaze elsewhere, as though he had not looked at Su Zimo the entire time. Su Zimo's body stiffened, and he lowered his head slowly. Upon hearing immortal Queen Ling Long's question, Su Zimo was silent for a moment before shaking his head. "It's nothing much." Heavenly Lord Six Brahma's gaze earlier on had two layers of meaning to it. First, it was to threaten him. Second, it was to remind him not to watch his words. Su Zimo was worried that if he revealed the true identity of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma to immortal Queen Ling Long, he would bring upon death for her and the human monarch. Although Su Zimo did not say anything, his abnormality earlier on still attracted the attention of immortal Queen Ling Long. Her gaze inadvertently lingered on Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. Actually, from the beginning, she had already felt that something was amiss. Why would the cultivation realm of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma rise so quickly? However, those were merely passing thoughts in her mind. She did not think too much about them. Coupled with Su Zimo's reaction earlier on, although immortal Queen Ling Long did not notice anything unusual about Heavenly Lord Six Brahma, she made it a point to be cautious. At that moment, Su Zimo lowered his head slightly with a dark gaze and remained silent. There was something that he could not understand. Logically speaking, Emperor Bo Sun had only met the martial Tao Prime body once. Today was the first time the Green Lotus True Body was meeting Emperor Bo Sun in his Heavenly Lord Six Brahma form as well. How did Heavenly Lord Six Brahma know that he was the martial Tao Prime body? That was the only possibility why Heavenly Lord Six Brahma noticed him right away and warned him with that gaze. Emperor Bo Sun once pushed the martial Tao Prime body into Greater Avici. Why did he not attack the martial Tao Prime body earlier on and allowed the latter to leave? Chapter 26-25 Think at Length. 26-25 Think at Length. Su Zimo had no intention of revealing the true identity of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma for the time being. On the one hand, it was the warning from Emperor Bo Sun. More importantly, it was not only in the Pure Land of Bliss. After this incident, Heavenly Lord Six Brahma had also gained an extremely positive reputation in the hearts of the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain Immortals. If Su Zimo were to stand out and tell the truth that Heavenly Lord Six Brahma was Emperor Bo Sun, there would only be a single outcome for him. He would be treated as a lunatic with ulterior motives. In fact, countless people would suspect his motives and suspect that he was a spy from the Fiend Domain who was here to slander Heavenly Lord Six Brahma and sow discord between the two domains. Even without Heavenly Lord Six Brahma making a move personally, countless fanatic believers would stand out and tear him into pieces. Who would suspect a benevolent emperor of the Buddhist monasteries who sacrificed himself for others over the words of a grade 9 heaven immortal like him? Looking at the benevolent Heavenly Lord Six Brahma who was surrounded by many immortals and monks, Su Zimo felt a chill in his heart. The situation in the heavenly world was getting more chaotic, and no one knew what would happen in the future. Of course, what made Su Zimo feel relieved was that Emperor Bo Sun was not without opponents. In this generation, Emperor Bo Sun was not the only one who had appeared. A fiend emperor that was even older than him had reappeared and was now presiding over the fiend domain. Even if Emperor Bosun could wreak havoc in the pure land of bliss, he could only occupy that domain at most. If he wanted to regain control of the fiend domain, he would definitely have to go against Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. At that time, there would definitely be a battle between the two fiend emperors. It would naturally be for the best if it was an internecine outcome. Even if one party was defeated, the other party would probably suffer immense losses. This might be an excellent opportunity for the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain. At that time, the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain could even accumulate strength to suppress the remaining Fiend Emperor and calm the chaos. Who was that earlier on? Right then, a furious shout sounded and a tremendous might enveloped the immortals and monks of the two domains, causing their hearts to tremble. This was the wrath of an emperor. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice and saw Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament surveying his surroundings. His gaze swept past Immortal King Qin Yang and the others as he asked coldly, "Long Night died and so did Qin Si, but you guys saw no one? Are all of you blind?" Immortal King Qin Yang and the others lowered their heads and did not dare to utter a thing. Although all of them were revered as immortal kings and many of them were supreme immortal kings, they had to bow down obediently in front of an immortal emperor. They did not even dare to refute the immortal emperor's scolding. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Prince Qin Si was dead as well. Although Qin Si was severely injured by the martial Dao Prime body and his body was destroyed, there was still an essence spirit carried and protected by Immortal King Long Night. To think that the mysterious expert hidden in the deep void had not only killed Immortal King Long Night, but also the Emperor's son, Qin Si. Initially, Su Zimo thought that Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament was alarmed due to the death of a supreme immortal king. From the looks of it, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament probably only chose to come out of seclusion because he loved his son so much. Of course, there was another reason. That mysterious expert should have taken away the Grand Pure Jade Manual, while killing Immortal King Long Night and Prince Qin Si. Which of you has the Grand Pure Jade Manual? Right then, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament glared at Immortal King Qin Yang and the others and asked coldly with a sinister tone. Immortal King Qin Yang and the others were alarmed and shook their heads hurriedly. This was no small matter, and they did not dare to be perfunctory. Immortal King Qin Yang said in a deep voice, "Immortal Emperor, Qin Si was first severely injured by Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain, and his body was destroyed. Only his essence spirit managed to escape with the Grand Pure Jade Manual. Fellow Taoist Long Night carried Qin Si's essence spirit and the Grand Pure Jade Manual with him in order to protect the latter. Now that fellow Taoist Long Night and Qin Si are dead, the Grand Pure Jade Manual should have been snatched away by that mysterious person." Immortal King Qi Ping hesitated for a moment. "Immortal Emperor, I noticed that the methods released by that mysterious person were a little similar to—" He wanted to continue but paused. "Speak!" Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament hollered. "They resemble the methods of the witch race," Immortal King Qi Ping said. Immortal King Qin Yang nodded slightly as well. At that time, a ghastly green light indeed flashed in the depths of the void and entered the glabella of fellow Taoist Long Night, killing him. "The witch race?" Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament frowned slightly with a dark expression. If this matter involved experts outside the heavenly world, it would be difficult to deal with. Could he possibly rush over to the witch world to demand for the culprit with just a few words from Immortal King Qin Yang and the others? Even if it was truly done by an expert of the witch race, there was no way the culprit would confess to it foolishly. The greatest possibility was that this matter would be left unresolved. At that thought, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament felt frustrated. He merely felt pity for the death of Immortal King Long Night. However, Qin Si's premature death and the loss of the Grand Pure Jade Manual enraged him. Immortal King Qin Yang and the others could tell the likely outcome of this matter as well. As such, they could naturally guess the frustration and resentment in the heart of Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament right now. Zen Master Weiwen could not help but say, "In my opinion, the culpability of this matter lies on Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain." The supreme arhat of the Pure Land of Bliss, Shurwunyen, was killed by the martial Dao Prime Body. Naturally, the monks of the Buddhist monasteries hated the martial Dao Prime Body to the core. Since nothing could be done to the witch world, they might as well redirect the anger of Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament onto Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. Zen Master Huiwen said, "If Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain hadn't come over to wreak havoc in the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain, and severely injured young Franchine so before chasing after fellow Taoist Long Night, the two of them wouldn't have been ambushed and died." Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured. A moment later he said, "Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain has the Hell Suppression tripod and is already hiding in Avici. Even with my capabilities, I can't do anything to him." Zen Master Huiwen said hurriedly, "Although Desolate Marshal is hiding, his Tianhuang sect is still in the Fiend Domain. Why don't?" Zen Master Huiwen's meaning was clear. He wanted to get Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament to destroy Tianhuang sect of the Fiend Domain. However, he was interrupted by a Buddhist proclamation before he could finish. Amitba. Heavenly Lord Six Brahma shook his head gently and looked at Zen Master Huiwen with a burning gaze. He said slowly, "Huiwen, your killing intent is too strong. If you don't wake up in time, you might be in danger of turning into a fiend." Zen Master Huiwen shuddered. The gaze of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma looked wise, as though it could read his thoughts and intentions. All his thoughts seemed to be exposed under the gaze of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. Zen Master Huiwen was sweating profusely from the gaze of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. He lowered his head hurriedly and said, "Thank you for your warning, Heavenly Lord Six Brahma. I understand my mistake now." "Excellent." Heavenly Lord Six Brahma nodded slightly. "You have to remember that the difference between becoming a Buddha or a fiend lies within a single thought. Always guard your heart and make sure you don't fall into the Fiend Tao." Zen Master Huiwen agreed repeatedly. Heavenly Lord Six Brahma turned to look at Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament, and nodded slightly. "Patron, please calm down and listen to me. Although Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain is hiding in Avici, we don't know if Emperor Bo Sun is hiding in Tianhuang sect. Furthermore, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is presiding over the Fiend Domain. Patron, if you were to head to the Fiend Domain and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse notices you, it'll be difficult for you to escape unscathed. We still have to think about this matter at length." Chapter 26 Arriving at the Battle Kingdom. 26 Arriving at the Battle Kingdom. "You're right, fellow Taoist." Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament nodded slightly and replied. In reality, even without the persuasion of Heavenly Lord Six Brahma, he could not have rushed to the Fiend Domain to destroy Tianhuang sect just to vent his anger. Tianhuang sect definitely had backing to be able to stand strong in the Fiend Domain for so many years. Ever since Fiend Emperor Apocalypse appeared, he swept through the Fiend Domain and conquered endlessly. However, he did not touch Tianhuang sect. That was a little interesting. Of course, it could be explained that Tianhuang sect was located at the borders of the Fiend Domain, and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not fancy it. However, there was another possibility. Perhaps there was some faction or person backing Tianhuang sect that made Fiend Emperor Apocalypse feel wary. Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament had lived for millions of years and was 10 times older than Zen Master Huiwen and the other immortal kings. What had he not seen before? How could he not understand that Zen Master Huiwen was trying to kill with a borrowed knife? Since Heavenly Lord Six Brahma also stood in to persuade him, he did not insist and went along with the flow. To think that there were also traces of people from the witch world in today's incident? Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament's gaze was dark. Although he could not attack the witch world because of this, he was still prepared to head to the witch world to see if he could find any clues. At that thought, Immortal Emperor Grand Firmament cupped his fists towards Heavenly Lord Six Brahma before turning to leave. He tore through the void and vanished. "Everyone, please disperse." Heavenly Lord Six Brahma looked at the immortals and monks of the two domains and said with a smile. In the eyes of everyone, Although Heavenly Lord Six Brahma was an emperor, he did not have the arrogance of one and was very approachable. He was unlike immortal Emperor Grand Firmament, who had a condescending attitude the entire time. The cultivators expressed their thanks once more. Heavenly Lord Six Brahma nodded slightly. Before leaving, his gaze seemed to brush past Su Zimo's face inadvertently before turning to leave, disappearing at the end of the firmaments. After the two emperors left, the immortals and monks present heaved a sigh of relief. In the face of the two emperors, even immortal king experts would feel an ubiquitous pressure. This was the might unique to emperor experts. The might of an emperor was not to be offended. One could only be considered as the peak existence of the upper world after cultivating to the emperor realm. They looked down on the world and ruled over millions of living beings. Initially, the cultivators of the two domains were delighted to be able to escape. However, before long, the joy in everyone's hearts faded and they had conflicted expressions. The 9 firmament meet held by the two domains this time round was a complete failure. Initially, the 9 firmament meet was meant to select the Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat of the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings. To think that the two ranking lists would end up benefiting someone else. The so-called Supreme Perfected Immortal and Supreme Arhat became stepping stones for someone else's notoriety. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. Shirwunyan had just become the Supreme Arhat when he was killed by a single punch from Desolate Marshal. For people such as Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Zither Immortal Meng Yao of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, they met with extremely tragic fates as well. Not only did Meng Yao lose to the Zither Fiend of Tianhuang sect in the Zither Dao, her appearance was even destroyed and could never be repaired. It could be said that Meng Yao had lost everything she once had at this 9 firmament meet. Her glory, her Zither Dao, her appearance, and everything that made her proud were trampled beneath the feet of Desolate Marshal of the Fiend Domain. As though she had lost her soul, Meng Yao had a lost expression and hollow eyes as she followed the crowd of Mountain Sea Immortal sect like a walking corpse. There was no longer anybody surrounding her as the center of attention. In fact, many fellow sect mates of Mountain Sea Immortal sect revealed looks of disgust when they saw the menacing scar on her face and hid far away instinctively. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's outcome was even worse. He was struck by countless remnants of eternal damnation. Even if he could survive, it would be a fate worse than death. At the 9 firmament meet, the cultivators of the two domains were initially high-spirited. The paragons and monster incarnates of the Perfected Immortal and Arhat rankings were even more vigorous. To think that such a beautiful scene would be shattered by someone in the blink of an eye. At that moment, the cultivators of the two domains were a little despondent. They were not the only ones, even the Immortal King experts present felt bitter. In fact, Immortal King Qin Yang and the others did not even want to recall the scene earlier on. The immortals and monks of the two domains, more than 20 Supreme Immortal Kings and more than 100 ordinary Immortal Kings were defeated by Desolate Marshal alone. Among the cultivators of the two domains, a few of them had different moods compared to others. Yun Zhu had a relaxed expression. Mo Qing lowered her head slightly and seemed to have thought of something with a faint smile. Why didn't someone as decisive to kill as Desolate Marshal kill me? I've already comprehended level 8 of the 9 palace subtle steps. How did he dispel it instantly? Jun Yu's eyes were still filled with confusion. Lin Lei could not help but lament. To think that Desolate Marshal would be stronger than he was in Langfeng City in just 2,000 years and have grown to such an extent. Prior to this, Lin Lei had a sliver of hope that he would be able to challenge Desolate Marshal one day. However, after today, that thought no longer crossed his mind. If you're in no hurry to return to the academy, why don't you head over to my place to rest? Immortal Queen Ling Long sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo. I happen to have something I want to talk to you about. All right. Su Zimo agreed hurriedly. I can pay a visit to Senior Human Monarch too. Su Zimo informed Mo Qing before following Immortal Queen Ling Long and the others to teleport back to the Battle Kingdom of the Green Firmament Immortal Domain. After arriving at the Battle Kingdom, Immortal Queen Ling Long dispersed some of the cultivators of the Battle Kingdom before returning to the palace with Lin Lei, Lin Luo, and Su Zimo. The two of you should head back and rest first. Immortal Queen Linglong said to Lin Lei and Lin Luo. Mother, Lin Luo and I have yet to greet father? Lin Lei frowned and glanced at Su Zimo at the side, muttering internally. Why was his mother so polite to Su Zimo? There's no need for that today. You guys can rest first and come back tomorrow. Immortal Queen Linglong sent Lin Lei and Lin Luo away first before saying to Su Zimo, Thank you for saving Lair and Luo previously. Only when he saw that there was no one else around, Su Zimo asked. Right, how are senior human monarch's injuries? Immortal Queen Linglong hesitated for a moment before shaking her head gently and sighing. Indeed, it had not worked. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Back when he gave Lin Luo the Soraka fruit, he had also vaguely guessed that the Soraka fruit and 9 Revolution Soul Return elixir alone might not be able to heal the human monarch's injuries. That's also the reason why you led the group personally this time round, right? Su Zimo continued. Immortal Queen Linglong nodded. If I hadn't appeared this time round and stayed in the Battle Kingdom, others would definitely know that the Battle King's injuries have yet to recover. My appearance at the 9 Firmament meet this time round can at least negate the suspicions of many factions. Chapter 26, 27, 26, 27 Entering Greater Avici once more. 26, 27 Entering Greater Avici once more. Before long, Immortal Queen Linglong brought Su Zimo to a chamber. The chamber was filled with an immortal fog and a strong medicinal scent. Through the thick fog, one could vaguely see a figure sitting in a lotus position on the bed, cultivating. Although they had not seen each other for many years, Su Zimo recognized human monarch Lin Zhan right away. Compared to when he was in Tianhuang mainland, the human monarch did not look much different. However, unlike the peerless glory and sharpness he possessed in the battle in Tianhuang mainland, the human monarch at that moment looked like an ordinary middle-aged man. Lin Zhan closed his eyes and frowned slightly, as though he had fallen into a critical juncture that could not be resolved. Su Zimo did not disturb him, and merely waved it off to Immortal Queen Linglong. Immortal Queen Linglong nodded somewhat apologetically and guided Su Zimo to the other side to rest. Avici. The martial Dao Prime body was domineering and invincible at the 9 Firmament meet. He was able to condense a Grotto-heaven and suppress the immortals and monks of the 2 domains before escaping unscathed. It was practically a perfect situation. However, at that moment, beneath the Mara mask, the expression of the martial Dao Prime body was a little grim. He recalled something. Earlier on, when he broke through beneath the Builder Tree and condensed his Grotto-heaven, he suddenly sensed tremendous danger. At that time, no one on the battlefield could threaten him. The sense of danger came without any warning and disappeared rapidly. Even with his spirit perception, he could not determine the origin. At that time, he was surrounded by 19 supreme immortal kings and did not think too much about it. Now that he recalled the fleeting sense of danger after calming down, the martial Dao Prime body felt a vague sense of uneasiness. Did it originate from the mysterious expert that hid in the void and killed immortal King Long Night? Or did it come from Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma who descended later on? Or was it some other powerful existence that he could not predict? The feeling was way too terrifying. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the first time he had felt such a strong sense of danger since the birth of the martial Dao Prime body. Even when he faced Fiend Emperor Apocalypse back then, he had never felt such a strong feeling. The martial Dao Prime body pondered in Avici for a long time without any clues. Under the Builder Tree, his combat strength increased exponentially after transforming into a Grotto-heaven. Right now, the martial Dao Prime body was already interested in heading to the Great Wilderness. Back then, before Dai Yu mended the heavens, she noticed the sentence he wrote at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley and praised. What boldness! You're comparable to me. I'll wait for you in the upper world. I hope that you can break through the mountains and rivers of the upper world and meet me again. Those were the final words left for him by Dai Yu. And now, the martial Dao Prime body had cultivated to this point. In terms of his martial Dao realm, he was not a king yet. However, he made use of the variable true martial Dao body to condense a Grotto-heaven, allowing him to gain control of the Grotto-heaven realm first through another pathway. Given his current strength, although he was not at the point where he could break through the mountains and rivers of the upper world, he was already qualified to head to the great wilderness to look for Daiyu. However, the martial Tao prime body was in no hurry to move. He still had many questions about Avici, and wanted to find an answer. All these years, he had often cultivated in seclusion in Avici. He possessed the Hell Suppression tripod. Apart from Greater Avici, he could roam freely in the various lesser hells and was long familiar with every single corner of this place. However, the martial Tao prime body could not understand why Great Emperor Infinite created Avici back then. Was it to suppress the fiends? Indeed, there were many powerful living beings buried in Avici. However, none of them worthy of this much attention from Great Emperor Infinite. The true core of the infinite hell was Greater Avici in the depths. Legend has it that Greater Avici was transformed from the flesh of Great Emperor Infinite. What sort of opponent would cause Great Emperor Infinite to come this far and even sacrifice himself to create a hell with his own flesh to suppress? What happened back then? Did this have anything to do with the legendary Fiend Lord who wreaked havoc in the Trichilia Cosm? All sorts of questions lingered in the mind of the martial Tao prime body. Before heading to the great wilderness, he was prepared to explore the core and depths of the infinite hell, Greater Avici. All the answers might be in Greater Avici. Back then, he was thrown into Greater Avici by Emperor Bo-sun and was trapped within, tortured. If not for the arrival of the Green Lotus True Body, the martial Tao prime body would never have been able to escape. Now, he controlled the Hell Suppression tripod and could into a Grotto-heaven. His combat strength was sufficient to suppress supreme immortal kings. That was enough for him to explore Greater Avici again. Apart from the Hell Suppression tripod, he carried the Soul Lantern with him. Furthermore, in the tomb of Great Emperor Heaven Burial, the Soul Lantern burned many ghost immortals and the oil was long filled. Once ignited, it could sustain him for a long time. Even if he encountered any danger in Greater Avici, he could retreat at any moment with the Hell Suppression tripod and Soul Lantern in his hands. At that thought, the martial Tao prime body summoned the Hell Suppression tripod and held it in his hands. In a flash, he crossed layers of space and arrived above Greater Avici. There was a gigantic pitch-black vortex beneath that resembled a door in the middle. It was bottomless and emitted a shuddering aura. Behind the door, it was as though malevolent ghosts were wailing and specters were flickering. The scene of him being thrown into the Avici gate by Emperor Bo-sun flashed through his mind. At that time, he was forced into Greater Avici. But this time round, the martial Tao prime body took the initiative to head to Greater Avici to find the answer. The martial Tao prime body carried the Hell Suppression tripod and leaped. Previously, it was as though countless pale arms were dragging him into Greater Avici. This time round, he held the Hell Suppression tripod in his hands and the pitch-black vortex beneath stopped. The Avici fiend she dispersed rapidly, revealing a passage. The Hell Suppression tripod was the Emperor weapon of Great Emperor Infinite after all and was the key to Avici. The martial Tao prime body passed through the Avici gate and returned to Greater Avici. The strange and terrifying feeling surfaced once more. After entering Greater Avici, his five senses and spirit perception were completely lost. Although he had already controlled the power of a Grotto-heaven, the martial Tao prime body could not see anything in Greater Avici. Here, there was no darkness or light and everything was unknown. He could not sense the passage of time and seemed to be floating in midair. He had nowhere to exert strength and could not sense the existence of space. Unlike the previous time, he held the Hell Suppression tripod in his hands this time round. The hellfire that was enough to cause one to fall into endless pain did not descend on him. The martial Tao prime body could not sense the direction, and could only walk forward instinctively. The surroundings were silent without a single sound. Even his footsteps could not be heard. After a long time, the martial Tao prime body still did not discover anything. As he had expected, he possessed the Hell Suppression tripod and did not encounter any danger in Greater Avici. However, he gained nothing as well. Should he continue walking aimlessly or should he leave? Just as the martial Tao prime body was hesitating, a commotion came from the depths of the unknown darkness or chaos on his left. Chapter 26-28 Netherworld Treasure Mirror. 26-28 Netherworld Treasure Mirror. The Martial Tao Prime body turned around suddenly with a grim expression. He propped his Hell Suppression tripod in front of him as a shield, and his figure was faintly visible, prepared to transform into a Grotto-heaven at any moment and release his full strength. However, before long, the Martial Tao Prime body relaxed. The commotion over, there was not a living being, but a will. After walking in Greater Avici for so long, this was the first time that the Martial Tao Prime body sensed the existence of something else, even if it was just a will. The owner of that will had existed in Greater Avici for a long time. After it appeared, it released immense hostility towards the Martial Tao Prime body. It tried to shake the Tao heart of the Martial Tao Prime body and release various terrifying scenes in the consciousness of the latter, be it temptation, intimidation, or threat. The Martial Tao Prime body stood on the spot motionlessly, and allowed the will to cast its arts nonchalantly. Such tricks were of no threat to the Martial Tao Prime body. It was just a remnant will without any material power, and there were limited methods it could release. The Martial Tao Prime body had a calm expression, and there was no contempt or mockery in his eyes, only sadness. The owner of that will must have been a top-tier expert who ruled over a region in the past, and was comparable to a great emperor. Otherwise, there was no way Great Emperor Infinite would sacrifice himself to create this hell with body and suppress that person here. The Martial Tao Prime body had endured endless pain in Greater Avici. The so-called infinite hell did not merely refer to the infinity of space, time, and suffering. It was also an infinite cycle. The moment one fell into Avici, they would suffer infinite pain without any pauses. There was also infinite life. From a certain perspective, living beings that fell into Avici were almost immortal. Unless Greater Avici was destroyed, the living beings here would have to endure pain forever and would never be free. There was also infinity of self. Be it living beings with flesh and blood or just souls, every single inch of those bodies and souls would endure infinite pain. How strong was this expert who was comparable to a great emperor back then? However, after falling into Greater Avici and enduring the pain and torture for a long time, there was only a remnant will left. The fact that it could now only release such low-level tricks against the Martial Tao Prime body was admirable. When the remnant will saw the Martial Tao Prime body wielding the Hell Suppression tripod, it must have regarded him as the successor of Great Emperor Infinite. That was the reason why it was so hostile. However, the remnant will posed no threat to the Martial Tao Prime body. "Who are you?" the Martial Tao Prime body attempted to ask. However, he realized that there was no sound when he spoke and the other party could not hear him. Even if the other party truly said something, he would not be able to hear it. This was Greater Avici. All sounds or spirit consciousness voice transmissions were useless. There was no way to communicate. Because of the appearance of that will, the Martial Tao Prime body decided to continue exploring ahead. When the Martial Tao Prime body decided to leave, the remnant will revealed a pleading expression and wanted the Martial Tao Prime body to stay. Over a long period of time, while enduring endless suffering, the owner of this will was also enduring loneliness and pain. There was no sound, space, time, or other life. There was only endless pain and torture. The Martial Tao Prime body ignored it and continued forward. After a long time, another will sounded from the depths of hell on his right. The Martial Tao Prime body could vaguely tell that this will was different from the previous one. However, similarly, this will was also extremely hostile towards the Martial Tao Prime body, and released some low-level tricks to threaten him. The Martial Tao Prime body was unmoved and continued forward. A long time later, a third will did not appear. He walked in the empty Greater Avici for a long time, but only 2 remnant wills appeared fleetingly. Even after the Martial Tao Prime body lingered here for long, he gained nothing. Even if he encountered the 2 remnant wills, they could not communicate, and he did not obtain any useful information. His surroundings were vast, and there was no light or darkness. Under such circumstances, even if I continue, I'm probably not going to find any answers. The martial Dao Prime Body sighed gently. Just as he was about to turn and leave, his heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly took out the soul lantern from his storage bag. After transforming into a Grotto-heaven, the martial Dao Prime Body could already defend against the powerful suction force on the essence spirit and soul when one's body came into contact with the soul lantern. The martial Dao Prime Body released an essence spirit fire and ignited the soul lantern. The soul lantern lit up and a ball of light appeared in Greater Avici. Light lit up and darkness accompanied it. Initially, there was no light or darkness in Greater Avici. However, as the soul lantern was ignited, the surrounding chaos turned into darkness and was gradually purged. There was a 10-foot radius of light around the martial Dao Prime Body. That bit of light made him feel slightly relieved. Right then, the flames that were initially burning vertically in the soul lantern suddenly deviated slightly in a direction. Eh? The martial Dao Prime Body focused his gaze. It was as though the flames of the soul lantern were guided in that direction by some power. In Greater Avici, the martial Dao Prime Body had already lost all sense of direction and merely continued forward. But now that he obtained the guidance of the soul lantern, he was invigorated. No matter what, the abnormality of the soul lantern was at least a clue. The martial Dao Prime Body took a deep breath and strode in the direction indicated by the flames of the soul lantern. After a long time, the footsteps of the martial Dao Prime Body gradually slowed down, and he looked at the ground not far away with a confused expression. Initially, the soul lantern was the only source of light in Greater Avici. However, another light shone on the ground not far away. The martial Dao Prime Body walked over and focused his gaze. Half of an ancient mirror-like object was buried in the dust on the ground. The light he saw earlier on was reflected by the ancient mirror through the light emitted by the soul lantern. The martial Dao Prime Body pondered for a moment before squatting down and taking out the half of the ancient mirror from the sand. The ancient mirror had been buried in Greater Avici for a long time but still looked intact. The mirror shone with a strange blood color, giving off a sinister aura. This ancient mirror buried in Greater Avici was definitely not an ordinary item. Furthermore, it was a treasure from the era of Great Emperor Infinite. The martial Dao Prime Body held the ancient mirror and touched it with his palm. There seemed to be some marks on the back of the ancient mirror. He flipped the ancient mirror over. There were a few words etched on the back of the ancient mirror. Netherworld Treasure Mirror. Chapter 2629 2629 Living Being. 2629 Living Being. The martial Dao Prime Body attempted to release his spirit consciousness and swept it across the Netherworld treasure mirror. However, apart from a sinister and cold feeling, he did not discover anything else. No matter how he tried, even when he released the power of the Grotto-heaven, there was no reaction from the Netherworld treasure mirror. The martial Dao Prime Body stood up and intended to put away the Netherworld treasure mirror first before continuing to explore in the direction of the flames of the soul lantern. However, he suddenly realized that the Netherworld treasure mirror could not be placed in his storage bag. Although the storage bag was open, there was an irreconcilable resistance between it and the Netherworld treasure mirror. The martial Dao Prime Body did not dare to throw the unknown ancient mirror into his consciousness casually either. After pondering for a moment, the martial Dao Prime Body placed the Netherworld treasure mirror in his embrace first, and raised the soul lantern before continuing in the direction indicated by the flames. After a long time, a tall silhouette vaguely appeared in the darkness ahead. When he approached, the martial Dao Prime Body was shocked to discover that what stood before him was a desolate and lonely ancient city. There was an ancient city in the depths of Greater Avici? The ancient city did not have city walls. The entrance of the ancient city was like the mouth of an ancient behemoth. It was deep and dark within, and one could not see the path ahead. The martial Dao Prime Body hesitated for a moment before heading into the ancient city. The ancient city was silent, and there was no life on both sides of the street. However, after entering the ancient city, the despair, pain and suffocating atmosphere in Greater Avici seemed to have vanished. The ancient city seemed to be a world of its own, isolating the city from Greater Avici outside. The Martial Tao Prime Body held the Hell Suppression tripod in his left hand and the Soul Lantern in his right as he walked along the street. There was nothing on the empty street except for his faint footsteps. After a while, the Martial Tao Prime Body seemed to have reached the end of the street and gradually slowed down. In an empty space at the end of the street, an ancient well was erected, looking a little abrupt. The Martial Tao Prime Body scanned his surroundings, and only headed towards the ancient well after discovering nothing. By the time he arrived at the edge of the ancient well, the flames of the Soul Lantern had returned to normal. It was as though the ancient well before him was the endpoint guided by the Soul Lantern. The Martial Tao Prime Body lowered his head and glanced into the ancient well. It was dark inside, sinister and lifeless. His spirit consciousness entered the ancient well and vanished instantly like a rock entering the sea. The Martial Tao Prime Body leaned over slightly and extended the Soul Lantern into the ancient well slowly, wanting to see if he could discover anything. Right then, a voice sounded from behind him. It was extremely close. "What did you see?" "Psst." The body of the Martial Tao Prime Body froze and he felt a chill run down his spine, shocked. That voice was not a remnant well within Greater Avici. The Martial Tao Prime Body could truly sense that there was indeed someone standing behind him. A living person. In fact, he could even sense the breathing of the person behind him. How was that possible? How could there be anyone alive in this ancient city in the depths of Greater Avici? Furthermore, he had clearly scanned carefully earlier on and there was no life in the surroundings, let alone a living being. In fact, he did not even know when this person arrived. How did this person appear behind him? That voice sounded familiar. However, the voice appeared way too suddenly and strangely. The Martial Tao Prime Body was shocked and did not think too much about it. His spirit perception did not give him any warning. It was all right to assume that the intruder was not hostile towards him. However, there was another possibility. The intruder was strong enough to hide from his spirit perception. The Martial Tao Prime Body did not escape right away. If the person behind him truly wanted to attack him, there was no need for him to say anything. The Martial Tao Prime Body was completely unprepared. The Martial Tao Prime Body turned around slowly and held the Hell Suppression tripod and Soul Lantern horizontally in front of his chest, on guard. Although he was prepared, he was still shocked when he turned around and saw who it was with disbelief in his eyes. "Senior, it's you!" A realization flashed through the mind of the Martial Tao Prime Body. It was no wonder why that voice sounded familiar. The person standing before him was the long-browed old monk known as the Tomb Keeper from the backyard of Azura Monastery on Great Tai Wei Mountain. The Martial Tao Prime Body did not have much interaction with this old monk who guarded the tombs. Back then, the two of them had met once. The Martial Tao Prime Body could vaguely sense that the old monk was extraordinary. Later on, the Green Lotus True Body, Yunzhu and Emo Qing left Avici and were hunted by 8 heavenly kings of the Buddhist monasteries. At that time, the old monk guarding the tombs was the one who killed more than half of the 8 heavenly kings of the Buddhist monasteries. To be precise, the old monk did not attack at all. A single sentence from him was all it took for a heavenly king of the Buddhist monasteries to die. He glanced at another heavenly king of the Buddhist monasteries and that heavenly king died on the spot. Out of the 8 heavenly kings, only 3 of them escaped in time by hiding in Avici, allowing them to escape from the hands of the old monk. However, at that time, the Martial Tao Prime Body presided over Avici, so the 3 heavenly kings could not escape the fate of death in the end as well. Thereafter, he had not heard any news of the old monk. He had asked Yunzhu about it but to no avail. Although the old monk looked like he was at the end of his road and could exhaust his lifespan at any moment, his strength was frightening. The Martial Tao Prime Body had not expected to see this old monk again in this ancient city of Greater Avici. He only managed to get through Greater Avici and arrive here thanks to the Hell Suppression tripod and Soul Lantern. How did the old monk manage to get here? Even emperors might not be able to leave alive if they were trapped in a lesser hell outside, let alone Greater Avici. Could this old monk that guarded the tombs be a great emperor? That thought flashed through the mind of the martial Tao prime body, and he was shocked. However, he calmed down before long. There was no way he was a great emperor. According to his understanding, ever since great Emperor Longevity passed away, there had not been a great emperor born in this generation. If someone had truly become a great emperor, the news would have long spread through the Trichiliocosm. Senior, why are you? The martial Tao prime body had many questions in his mind and could not help but ask when he saw that the old monk was not hostile towards him. However, before he could finish, the old monk suddenly reached out with his skinny palm and pushed towards his chest. The martial Tao prime body's heart skipped a beat. He watched helplessly as the skinny palm of the old monk pushed towards him. However, his body no longer seemed to be under his control and he could not move at all. Even with the hell suppression tripod and soul lantern in his hands, it was useless. What was this old monk trying to do? Was he trying to kill him? Why? In a flash, countless thoughts flashed through the mind of the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 2630 2630 Loss of Connection. 2630 Loss of Connection. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind, and the skinny palm of the old monk had already slapped the chest of the martial Tao prime body. The martial Tao prime body could not move at all and was prepared to die here. Given the strength of the old monk, even if he had a Grotto-heaven and a perfected true martial Tao body, he would not be able to withstand a palm strike as such. However, the martial Tao prime body did not feel any pain when the old monk's palm descended. To be precise, the old monk merely nudged him gently. At that moment, the martial Tao prime body was standing at the edge of the ancient well. After being pushed by the old monk, he lost control of his body and balance, falling head first into the dark and sinister ancient well. The figure of the martial Tao prime body was devoured by the darkness, and he was falling into an endless abyss. The surrounding ancient city and ancient well seemed to have vanished instantly. The old monk was the only one still around. Arriving at the edge of the dark abyss, the old monk looked down at the falling martial Tao prime body. He smirked slightly, revealing a mysterious smile on his wrinkled old face. A strange look flashed through the depths of the old monk's hazy eyes. The next moment, the martial Tao prime body was completely devoured by the darkness, and could not see anything. At the same time, he lost connection with the green lotus true body completely. Green firmament immortal domain, battle kingdom. Human monarch's chamber. Enshrouded by the immortal fog, Suzimo shuddered and clenched his fists instinctively. Suddenly, he stood up with a furious expression. When the martial Tao prime body entered Greater Avici, the green lotus true body's attention had always been on the martial Tao prime body. After the martial Tao prime body refined the hell suppression tripod, it was equivalent to him controlling Avici. Even though the martial Tao prime body was in Avici, and had even entered Greater Avici, the two true bodies could still sense one another. Therefore, the green lotus true body knew everything that the martial Tao prime body experienced in Greater Avici, as though he was experiencing it personally. That was the reason why the green lotus true body lost his composure when the martial Tao prime body was pushed into the dark abyss by the old monk. He had completely lost the connection to the martial Tao prime body. Su Zimo's expression was terrible. The martial Tao prime body had just condensed the Grotto-heaven and the perfected true martial Tao body. In fact, he even had a direction for the dermic formulation for the next realm of the martial Tao. To think that he would encounter such an undeserved calamity in Greater Avici, and his fate was unknown. Su Zimo had not expected to encounter the old monk in the depths of Greater Avici. Less than that, he had not expected the old monk to push him into the dark abyss without a second word. Right then, Su Zimo felt something strange and looked over instinctively. Not far away, human monarch Lin Zhan and immortal queen Ling Long were looking at him with worried expressions. His mind was focused on the martial Tao prime body earlier on. It was only now that Su Zimo snapped out of his stupor and recalled that he was in the chamber of the human monarch. "I'm Su Zimo of Tianhuang mainland," Greetings, Senior Human Monarch. Suppressing his emotions, Su Zimo took a deep breath and bowed. Lin Jian nodded slightly. Immortal Queen Ling Long had a worried expression, as though she could tell that something serious had happened to Su Zimo. She asked gently, "Are you all right?" "It's fine." Su Zimo forced a smile. Even if he revealed this matter, the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long could not do anything about it. Even emperors could not come out of Greater Avici, let alone the human monarch who was severely injured and minor Grotto-heaven immortal Queen Ling Long. "How long have I been here?" Su Zimo noticed that human monarch Lin Jian had already woken up from his recuperation and realized that quite a bit of time must have passed. "It's been 7 days," immortal Queen Ling Long said. "We saw that you seemed to be immersed in a certain state and was experiencing something. As such, we did not disturb you." Su Zimo sighed internally. To think that although the trip of the Martial Dao Prime body to Greater Avici seemed short, 7 days had passed. Indeed, the passing of time could not be experienced in Greater Avici. "Seniors, have you heard of the Tomb Keeper?" Su Zimo pondered for a moment and asked. The human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long recalled carefully with lost expressions. They exchanged glances and shook their heads slowly. Su Zimo had expected this. Even Yun Zhu, who read the ancient books and was well versed in history, did not know the Tomb Keeper. It was understandable for the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long to not know as well. "Senior human monarch, how are your injuries?" Su Zimo asked again. No matter what, the human monarch's current injuries were caused because he disregarded everything and forcefully descended to Tianhuang mainland in the past, back when the human race of Tianhuang mainland met with a calamity. Lin Jian waved it off and smiled in a carefree manner. "After obtaining your 9 revolution soul return elixir and Siraka fruit, I've recovered a little, and my combat strength has also recovered to the Grotto-heaven realm. My life is not in danger." Although the human monarch did not say it explicitly, Su Zimo could tell. His combat strength was probably only at the minor Grotto-heaven realm at the very most, and was far from his peak. The human monarch smiled. "Don't worry about me. I'm long used to being haunted by these injuries in the upper world all these years. On the other hand, you've truly shocked me and Ling Long ever since your ascension. In less than 10,000 years, your green lotus true body has already cultivated to the peak of a grade 9 heaven immortal. As long as there's a suitable opportunity, you can condense a Dao fruit at any moment and advance to the perfected One realm. Also, that true body of yours with the title of Desolate Marshal is even more powerful. You wreaked havoc at the Immortal Peach Banquet of the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain, and the battle in the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain shocked the world to its core. It's unfortunate that I did not get to witness it personally. What a pity!" Human monarch Lin Jian was all smiles as he praised Su Zimo with a gratified expression. All these years, he had been plagued by injuries as well internal and external troubles in the Battle Kingdom. He was worried all day and barely smiled. Right now, seeing Su Zimo was the happiest thing that had happened to him in recent years. On the one hand, it was rare to see an old friend from Tianhuang mainland, and he felt extremely close. On the other hand, he was relieved that a junior from Tianhuang mainland managed to rise rapidly and become famous in the heavenly world. Back then, the reason why he endured the risk of being severely injured and forcefully descended was because he wanted to make use of Su Zimo's body to fight against the monarchs of the various races. That process was equivalent to him leaving his dermic Dao to Su Zimo. Before leaving, he even passed down the position of the human monarch to this young man back then. Even human monarch Lin Jian did not expect that the young man back then would be able to make such a name for himself in the heavenly world after ascending to the upper world. "Bring me wine!" Emotional and excited, the human monarch waved his hand. Immortal Queen Ling Long pursed her lips and smiled. She said with bravado, "I've prepared it a long time ago. Count me in, we'll drink to our heart's content today. Unfortunately, we're missing Brother Feng." The human monarch shook his head gently with a regretful tone. Immortal Queen Ling Long took out 3 jars of strong wine and left one for herself before sharing the other 2 with the human monarch and Su Zimo. Chapter 2631 2631 Demon Empress Blood Butterfly 2631 Demon Empress Blood Butterfly. The three of them drank heartily before Su Zimo calmed down slightly. He then gradually let go of the matter of the martial Dao Prime body. It was useless even if he thought about it. Back when the martial Dao Prime body fell into Greater Avici, he lost contact with the martial Dao Prime body. However, at that time, the Hell Suppression tripod was in the hands of the Green Lotus True Body. After the Green Lotus True Body entered Avici, he established a new connection with the martial Dao Prime body and saved the latter. This time round, the Hell Suppression tripod and Soul Lantern were both with the martial Dao Prime body. Given the current cultivation of the Green Lotus True Body, he would definitely die if he entered Greater Avici, let alone save the martial Dao Prime body. The only thing that made Su Zimo feel slightly relieved was that before the martial Dao Prime body fell into the dark abyss, the old monk revealed a mysterious smile. That smile did not seem hostile or murderous, as though there was a deeper meaning. Previously, when he lost contact with the martial Dao Prime body, he at least knew where the latter was. However, this time round, he did not know where the martial Dao Prime body went. Furthermore, this time round, there was probably no one who could help the martial Dao Prime body. Whether the martial Dao Prime body could survive and return safely depended on his own fate. At the mention of Feng Cantian and Tianhuang sect, they could not help but talk about the situation in the Fiend domain. Lin Zhan said deeply, "Because of the existence of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, it might be difficult for Tianhuang sect to gain a foothold in the Fiend domain in the future." Immortal Queen Linglong added, "It's said that Emperor Bo Sun has reappeared in this generation as well. In the future, these two Fiend Emperors will definitely fight in the Fiend domain. Tianhuang sect should look for a way out lest they get embroiled in the flames of war between the two Fiend Emperors in the future." At the mention of Emperor Bo Sun and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He recalled a question that had been buried in his heart for a long time and asked. Legend has it that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was an emperor expert from tens of millions of years ago. How did he manage to survive till this era? The human monarch and immortal Queen Linglong were both immortal kings after all. They definitely knew more about the cultivation realms and powers of emperors compared to him. Immortal Queen Linglong said, "Be it great emperors or emperors, their lifespans are similar and are almost always around 10 million years. In the records, only Great Emperor Longevity managed to live for 20 million years, and that's already unprecedented. Although Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is strong, he can have lived for tens of millions of years." Pausing for a moment, Immortal Queen Linglong said, "I'm more inclined to think that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had in fact died tens of millions of years ago. However, he was resurrected in this generation using some heavenly defying dermic formulation." Resurrection. When he heard that, Su Zimo frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. He had a feeling that he had neglected an extremely important piece of information. Suddenly, Immortal Queen Linglong asked, "Zimo, apart from us, did you know any other experts of the upper world before you ascended?" Experts of the upper world? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Apart from the human monarch couple, Daiyu was the only other expert of the upper world he knew before he ascended. "I know someone indeed." Su Zimo nodded and did not hide anything. "However, she's not in the heavenly world. She's in the great wilderness. Back when Senior Human Monarch descended, I even asked him about her, but to no avail." Lin Zhan smiled. "I'm only an immortal king of the green firmament immortal domain after all. I've only been to the great wilderness once, and don't know much about it nor the many experts there." Back in the lower worlds, Su Zimo asked the human monarch about the name Daiyu. Later on, before Daiyu mended the heavens, she told him that even in the upper world, there were less than 5 people who knew that her name was Daiyu. Daiyu even told him that if he were to ask anyone else, he might as well ask about the blood butterfly of the great wilderness. At that thought, Su Zimo asked again, "Senior Human Monarch, have you heard of the blood butterfly of the great wilderness?" At the mention of those words, human monarch Lin Zhan was not the only one. Even immortal Queen Linglong's expression changed. "Blood butterfly?" Lin Zhan asked with a grim expression. Demon Empress Blood Butterfly? I think so, Su Zimo said. Back then, before King Yunyu's clone died, he begged Daiyu for mercy and intermittently mentioned something about the Blood Butterfly and Empress. He was probably trying to call her name, Demon Empress Blood Butterfly. Immortal Queen Ling Long nodded and said, There's only one Blood Butterfly of the Great Wilderness. She's famous in the Great Wilderness, right? Su Zimo probed. In reality, he could roughly guess that from the reactions of the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long. It's not just in the Great Wilderness. Human monarch Lin Zhan shook his head gently and lamented. Demon Empress Blood Butterfly is one of the most renowned and strongest emperors in the entire upper world. The experts of the upper world might not have heard of the immortal emperors of the various immortal domains, but they have definitely heard of Demon Empress Blood Butterfly. I once heard Immortal Emperor Green Firmament personally mention that among the emperors of the upper world, Demon Empress Blood Butterfly has the highest potential and is the closest to being a great emperor. So strong! Su Zimo was secretly speechless and surprised. He had long imagined that Daiyu was definitely extraordinary in the upper world. However, he did not expect her to be so strong. Immortal Queen Ling Long added, The butterfly race is innately weak. Even though the monarch butterfly lineage appeared, they can't compare to other powerful living beings. However, the rise of Demon Empress Blood Butterfly changed the status of the butterfly race among the 10,000 races single-handedly. It's precisely because of her existence that other living beings don't dare to underestimate the butterfly race. At the mention of that information, Immortal Queen Ling Long's tone was filled with admiration and longing. Even her initially calm eyes rippled. Su Zimo was emotional as well. It was as though the figure in blood-red robes had appeared before him once more. She was invincible in Tianhuang mainland and killed all the witches in Tianhuang mainland with a single palm strike and a peerless bearing. He could not imagine how magnificent Daiyu's past was. Immortal Emperor Ling Long continued. What's even rarer is that Demon Empress Blood Butterfly is a woman with shocking talent. She doesn't give in to anyone. I admire her immensely. If I can even reach 10% of her in the future, that'll be enough. Su Zimo burst into laughter. From the looks of it, Immortal Queen Ling Long clearly viewed Daiyu as a role model and a target to chase. Furthermore, Immortal Queen Ling Long had not even seen Daiyu before. It was clear how much influence Daiyu had in the upper world. Su Zimo recounted how Daiyu made use of her bloodline phenomenon to descend upon Tianhuang mainland and resolve the calamity of the witch race before mending the heavens to leave. This was the first time the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long had heard of this, and they were even more shocked. Lin Zhan said, Back when I forcefully descended, I realized that I might leave behind a huge hidden ailment for Tianhuang mainland. To think that she was the one who stepped in to resolve it. Chapter 2632-2632 Who is the Mastermind? 2632 Who is the Mastermind? Immortal Queen Ling Long smiled as well. So, there's such an expert backing you. Seems like the information back then should have come from this Demon Empress Blood Butterfly. Su Zimo did not really understand what she meant and asked instinctively. What information? Immortal Queen Ling Long said. Back when you ascended, King Yunyu tried to kill you. The reason why I could arrive in time was because I obtained a piece of information in advance. Otherwise, there was no way I could have divined the precise time and location of your calamity given my methods and capabilities. Su Zimo's expression changed, and he narrowed his eyes. Immortal Queen Ling Long did not notice it, and sighed gently. Sigh, unfortunately, Lin Zhan was injured back then. Although I arrived, I was still a step too late and caused you to lose a true body. I don't know why Demon Empress Blood Butterfly did not appear personally back then. If she had, she could have crushed King Yunyu with a single finger. Lin Zhan shook his head gently. I heard that the situation in the Great Wilderness is rather chaotic and the flames of war are endless. There are a few demon emperors with terrifying strength. For some unknown reason, even Demon Empress Blood Butterfly was severely injured in the past. 12 demon kings under her lead suffered immense losses and more than half of her territory was snatched. In recent years, even after Demon Empress Blood Butterfly's domineering return, she has yet to recover her lost territory completely. She must be too busy handling everything personally. As the two of them conversed, they suddenly realized that Suzumo, who was at the side, had been silent the entire time and looked terrible. Lin Zhan thought that Suzumo was worried about the situation in the great wilderness, and consoled him. "Don't worry, Zimo. Given the current strength of Demon Empress Blood Butterfly, no one should be able to hurt her." Suzumo was not worried about Daiyu. As the human monarch had said, given Daiyu's strength and methods, there was no need for him to worry. Furthermore, he was not strong enough right now and could not help much even if he headed to the great wilderness. He was thinking about something else. Immortal Queen Ling Long had just told him that she only managed to arrive in time back then because she received a piece of information. She thought that the information came from Daiyu. However, given Suzumo's understanding of Daiyu, there was no way it was done by her. How strong was Daiyu? She was someone who was unwilling to owe anyone favors. As such, why would she send a message to the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long to ask them for help? If Daiyu wanted to save him, there was no need for her to beat around the bush. That was not Daiyu's style of doing things. That style reminded Suzumo of something else. Back when he killed Prince Yuanzhua in Absolute Thunder City and searched the latter's soul, he saw an image in the latter's memories. Initially, Prince Yuanzhua did not know where he was. It was because he suddenly received a letter that he knew that Suzumo was taking part in the immortal sex selection and could recognize his appearance after changing. The styles of handling things in both events were way too similar. Suzumo thought of that right away. At the same time, it confirmed a speculation in his mind. However, that speculation was even more terrifying than he had imagined. Suzumo had once thought that the moment he arrived at the divine firmament immortal domain, it was as though a pair of invisible hands had appeared behind him, manipulating his fate and guiding his every move. And now, Suzumo suddenly realized that the invisible hands might have already set a plan in motion from the moment he ascended. "What's on your mind, Zimo?" Immortal Queen Ling Long noticed that Suzumo did not look too good and asked again. Suzumo said slowly, "Senior Ling Long, the information you received shouldn't have been from Demon Empress Blood Butterfly." "It wasn't Demon Empress Blood Butterfly?" Immortal Queen Ling Long frowned slightly and asked, "Who was it then?" Taking a deep breath of air, Suzumo did not hide anything from the human monarch and immortal Queen Ling Long and recounted everything that happened in the divine firmament immortal domain. This included how he offended Prince Yuanzhua, participated in the immortal sex selection, and eventually joined Heaven and Earth Academy after some twists and turns. After hearing that, the expression of immortal Queen Ling Long turned grim as well. It was clear that there was a problem. Lin Zhan was in disbelief and frowned. "Someone has been manipulating things ever since he ascended? What's the person's motive?" "The complete creation Green Lotus," Immortal Queen Ling Long said slowly. "There's only one creation Green Lotus in the entire world, and it's the most mysterious treasure with unimaginable potential. Throughout history, it has been extremely difficult for the creation Green Lotus to grow. Now that the creation Green Lotus has fused with Suzumo in this generation, the conditions for it to grow are even more stringent. If Suzumo is suppressed and imprisoned in advance, no matter what methods he uses, as long as Suzumo is unwilling, he won't be able to grow the creation Green Lotus to its final mature state of grade 12. The best way was to give Suzumo sufficient opportunities to cultivate and grow on his own. When he grows to the mature state of grade 12, he will finally make a move to pluck it. That way, he can obtain the greatest benefits." Through Suzumo's recount, Immortal Queen Ling Long deduced many things. All of them coincided with Suzumo's previous speculation. Suzumo was unwilling to believe it the entire time because this speculation would definitely point to a single person in the end. The sect master of the academy. Without that speculation, Su Zimo was indebted to the sect master of the academy through a life-saving grace. Back at the immortal sex election, if not for Yang Rox's persistence and the timely appearance of senior sister Mo Qing, he would have been killed by zither immortal Meng Yao. It was also because of the shelter of Heaven and Earth Academy that he could temporarily escape the threat of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom. Later on, when he obtained rank 1 of the Earth ranking and returned to Heaven and Earth Academy, he encountered an inexplicable assassination attempt. At that time, things were resolved after the sect master of the academy stepped in personally. Up till now, Su Zimo could not be sure if he was the target of the assassination attempt, or if it was someone else. However, no matter what, the sect master of the academy had indeed saved them. Thereafter, he condensed the 10th step on the Tao Heart Stairs. The sect master of the academy appeared and accepted him as an in-name legacy disciple, even giving him a teleportation talisman. It was also because of this teleportation talisman that he could escape back to Heaven and Earth Academy with Tao Yao from the chaotic situation in Langfeng City. Later on, he headed to Absolute Thunder City alone and burned it to ashes. He killed many Heaven Immortals and even Prince Yuanzhua, alarming the Immortal King of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom. At that time, the matter was also resolved after the sect master of the academy stepped in. Furthermore, after that incident, the sect master of the academy spoke to him, and did not hide the fact that he already knew the secret of the creation Green Lotus. It was because of that conversation that Su Zimo's suspicions towards the sect master of the academy decreased significantly. If the sect master of the academy truly coveted his Green Lotus true body, why would he be honest with him? Chapter 2633 2633 Technique Reserve 2633 Technique Reserve. However, all the clues pointed to the sect master of the academy. Or rather, it was someone from Heaven and Earth Academy. That was because back at the Immortal Sect Selection, Su Zimo's initial intention was not Heaven and Earth Academy, but Mountain Sea Immortal Sect. However, because of the appearance of Prince Yuanzhua and Zither Immortal Meng Yao, a huge change happened at the Immortal Sect Selection. In the end, after a few twists and turns alongside Yang Rox's insistence as well as senior sister Mo Qing's appearance, he joined Heaven and Earth Academy. The entire process was filled with uncertainty and coincidence. If there was truly such a person plotting behind the scenes, it meant that this person had long divined all the coincidences and determined the eventual direction of the matter. What sort of wisdom was that? Furthermore, after the sect master of the academy spoke to him, Su Zimo even specially asked senior sister Mo Qing about her appearance back then. According to senior sister Mo Qing, it was because of Elder 8 of the academy that she rushed to the Immortal Sect Selection. Who was Elder 8 of the academy? What sort of a role was he playing in between? Could it be the sect master of the academy? Su Zimo looked at Immortal Queen Ling Long and asked softly. Immortal Queen Ling Long remained silent. The implications of this matter were extremely important. The sect master of the academy was Su Zimo's master after all and even had a life-saving grace towards the latter. She could not make wild guesses without any evidence. I'm not sure if it's the sect master of the academy, Immortal Queen Ling Long said in a deep voice. However, the sect master of the academy is able to divine the heavenly secrets, the human heart, fate and karma. He does have the ability to set such a plan in motion. This was no simple plan. After all, Su Zimo was not the only target. There was also Prince Yuanzhua, the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom, Yang Roxu, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Painting Immortal Mo Qing. There was even King Yun Yu and Immortal Queen Ling Long. Everyone Su Zimo had seen ever since he started cultivating could have been a chess piece. Immortal Queen Ling Long said, Although I'm also good at divination, I'm indeed inferior to the sect master of the academy when it comes to divining the heavenly secrets and fate. At the very least, given my capabilities, there's no way I could have divined the time and location of your ascension. Su Zimo nodded. The 9th stone step of Heaven and Earth Academy's Tao Heart Stairs, the Wisdom Step, was condensed by the sect master of the academy. Back when he ascended to the 9th stone step, he experienced the will of the sect master of the academy. The impact on his Tao heart was indeed extremely shocking. The reason why he could survive the 9th stone step and condense the 10th stone step of the Tao heart stairs was because his two true bodies resonated and his martial Tao will descended. It was no exaggeration to claim that the sect master of the academy could plan flawlessly. Suddenly, Immortal Queen Linglong asked, "I heard from Luo that back in Langfeng City, you unintentionally released the 9 palace subtle steps. Have you seen such a footwork somewhere? Back when the martial Tao prime body underwent tribulation transcendence, a few humanoid heavenly tribulations descended. Among them, a black-robed woman held a turtle shell in one hand and a horsetail whip in the other." Su Zimo did not know why Immortal Queen Linglong suddenly mentioned this matter. However, he still nodded and did not hide anything. Upon hearing Su Zimo's description, the eyes of Immortal Queen Linglong lit up. Su Zimo continued, "This black-robed woman's combat strength is terrifying, and she once used this mysterious footwork. It was extremely enigmatic and left a deep impression on me. Later on, in Langfeng City, I released it by a stroke of inspiration." "Indeed." Immortal Queen Linglong murmured softly before asking with a smile, "Do you know who the black-robed woman you saw was?" "I don't know." Su Zimo shook his head. Immortal Queen Linglong said, "The era of this black-robed woman might be more than 1,000,000,000 years ago, or even billions of years ago. No matter what, she should be the oldest great emperor in the records of the upper world." "It was another great emperor." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. "Back then, Demonisji told him that the white-robed woman with a long sword that the martial Tao prime body saw during the 10th tribulation was a great emperor in the past. Great Empress 9 Nether. If this black-robed woman was once a great emperor as well, that meant that the few people the martial Tao prime body saw when he underwent tribulation transcendence should be great emperors who had left traces of dermic Tao in the upper world." Immortal Queen Linglong continued, "The black-robed woman you saw was Great Empress 9 Heaven's mystic maiden. She once left behind a dermic Tao inheritance in the upper world. It's a taboo mystic classic called the Technique Reserve. Taboo mystic classics were extremely rare and only great emperors could leave behind taboo mystic classic inheritances. For example, although Emperor Bo Sun and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse were strong, their Fiend Obsession Buddha Karmic Sutra and Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra were only comparable to taboo mystic classics at most and were not at the level of actual taboo mystic classics. The Technique Reserve is all-encompassing, including divination, geomancy, destiny, phenomenon, dream interpretation, auspicious choice, astral interpretation, astronomical phenomenon, talisman, everything. There are a total of 3 sections to the Technique Reserve, starting with Primordial Unity. The remaining 2 sections are Chimen Duinjia and 6 Ren Divine Calculation. Back then, I obtained this opportunity at the same time as the sect master of the academy. We were both chosen by the dermic Tao of Great Empress 9 Heaven's mystic maiden, but we received different inheritances. The sect master of the academy received Chimen Duinjiao, while I received 6 Ren Divine Calculation. In terms of divining heavenly secrets, fate and offensive techniques, Chimen Duinjia is superior. The dermic formulation of the 9 palace subtle steps is hidden in 6 Ren Divine Calculation. At that point, Su Zimo was enlightened. It was no wonder why Immortal Queen Linglong would suddenly mention this matter. So, there was such a relationship between her and the sect master of the academy. The reason why the sect master of the academy was superior to her in terms of divining fate was because he obtained Chimen Duinjia of the Technique Reserve. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked, "Senior, you just said that there are 3 sections to the Technique Reserve. Who obtained the inheritance of Primordial Unity?" According to Immortal Queen Linglong, Primordial Unity was the first of the 3 sections in the Technique Reserve. Therefore, it should be even more mysterious. Immortal Queen Linglong said, "The dermic Tao of Primordial Unity has a unique origin, and it was not passed down. Neither I nor the sect master of the academy obtained it." Pausing for a moment, Immortal Queen Linglong suddenly took out an ancient turtle shell from her storage bag and handed it to Su Zimo. Back then, when you saw the turtle shell in the hands of great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden, this should be what it looked like, right? Suzimo focused his gaze and nodded. The size of the turtle shell and even the patterns on it were identical to the one he had seen in the hands of the black-robed woman. From the looks of it, the weapon of great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden had already been passed down, and was obtained by immortal Queen Linglong. Right then, a thought flashed through Suzimo's mind. He thought of the other weapon in the hands of great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden, the jade-handled horsetail whip. It was completely identical to the primordial Unity horsetail whip in his possession. Furthermore, the primordial Unity horsetail whip carried the words Primordial Unity. There was also the Primordial Unity section in the Technique Reserve. Was there a connection between the two? Chapter 2634 Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. 2634 Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. Immortal Queen Linglong smiled gently. If I'm not wrong, the primordial Unity horsetail whip of great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden should be in your possession. Yes. Suzimo did not hide anything and asked bluntly. Senior, may I ask if there's a connection between the primordial Unity horsetail whip and the primordial Unity section of the Technique Reserve? Yes. Immortal Queen Linglong first gave a definite answer before asking again. Did you obtain any secret skills sutras when you obtained the primordial Unity horsetail whip? Indeed, there's a sutra called the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. The two sections add up to less than 600 words. Suzimo said. However, the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra is filled with strange runes and I can't understand a single word. To be precise, the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra was a lineage memory that Suzimo obtained when he stood on the 9th stone step of the Tao Heart Stairs and sorted out the heavenly secrets. As though he thought of a possibility, Suzimo could not help but ask. Could the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra be the first section of the Technique Reserve, Primordial Unity? Immortal Queen Linglong smiled. Yes and no. Suzimo was puzzled. Immortal Queen Linglong said. Back then, great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden only obtained the primordial Unity horsetail whip after she obtained the creation Green Lotus and nurtured it to the mature state of grade 12. Of course, she also obtained the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. Immortal Queen Linglong's words revealed another piece of information. The creation Green Lotus was extremely ancient, and had already existed in the era of great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden. Immortal Queen Linglong continued. In reality, the later two sections of the Technique Reserve, Jimin Duanjia and 6 Ren Divine Calculation, were created by great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden. The first section, Primordial Unity, was the Dharmic Tao comprehended by great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden through the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. The Technique Reserve was only at the level of a taboo mystic classic after Primordial Unity was added to it. Suzimo pondered for a moment and probed. Senior, do you mean that the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra is at an even higher level than Primordial Unity? Of course. Immortal Queen Linglong nodded. Different people might obtain different Dharmic Tao comprehensions after reading the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra. According to great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden, although the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra only has slightly more than 600 words, it contains endless secrets of the universe. Anyone who can comprehend a secret skill from it will benefit endlessly. If even the oldest great Empress Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden in the records had such a high evaluation of the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra, what was the background of the creation Green Lotus that gave birth to the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra? Suzimo was secretly speechless and his heart skipped a beat. For a moment, he could not accept such overwhelming information. A moment later, he gradually composed himself and took out a white paper from his storage bag, prepared to write out the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra completely. What are you doing? Suzimo had just written a few runes when Immortal Queen Linglong stopped him hurriedly, and asked in a deep voice. Suzimo said, I don't recognize the strange runes on the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra, so I'm going to write them down to receive your guidance, Senior. Immortal Queen Linglong said carefully. You have to think carefully. Once you write down this secret skill, I'll naturally see it as well. Su Zimo smiled nonchalantly. Both of you have saved my life before. It's nothing much for me to share the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra. In fact, it would be best if you can comprehend the primordial unity section from this secret skill, Senior. In reality, back in Heaven and Earth Academy, when Su Zimo stood on the 9th stone step of the Tao Heart Stairs, he realized that the sect master of the Academy should know about the strange runes. However, in the depths of his heart, he had always been wary of the sect master of the Academy. Therefore, right from the beginning, he had not mentioned this matter to the sect master of the Academy or sought guidance from the latter about the strange runes in the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra. However, Su Zimo naturally had no doubts about the human monarch couple. All right. When immortal Queen Ling Long saw that Su Zimo had already decided, she nodded in agreement and was a little excited. After all, this legendary sutra was extremely important to her as well. As Su Zimo had said, if she could comprehend the primordial unity section from it, it would be of immense help and advancement to her. Before long, Su Zimo recorded all the strange runes in the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra based on his memories on the white paper and handed it to immortal Queen Ling Long and the human monarch. Lin Zhan waved it off with a bitter smile. This is utter gibberish to me and I can't make tales of it. It's indeed these words. Immortal Queen Ling Long murmured softly with a grim expression. What words? What race are they from? Su Zimo asked. I'm not sure. Immortal Queen Ling Long shook her head. The first time I came into contact with these words was when I received the inheritance of Great Empress Nine Heaven's mystic maiden. These words don't seem to be from any race. They seem more like an extremely ancient civilization. In fact, at that point, immortal Queen Ling Long suddenly paused for a moment before saying slowly, in fact, it might even be from the major Kiliakosm. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He knew very little about the major Kiliakosm. If immortal Queen Ling Long's deduction was true, the origin of this Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra was huge. Relying on her inheritance of Great Empress Nine Heaven's mystic maiden, immortal Queen Ling Long quickly transformed the strange runes of the secret skill into modern words. Su Zimo looked over word by word. Observe the Tao of the heavens and execute accordingly. Through that, fulfillment can be achieved. There are 5 negative attributes manifested in the heart, and those who derive them shall thrive. The universe is within grasp and myriad transformations arise within oneself. Every single sentence seemed to contain some secret of heaven and earth, and the logic of the great Tao. However, Su Zimo could not make out anything within a short period of time. The Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra only had slightly more than 600 words and he browsed through it before long. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed. He saw some passages in the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra and read it out instinctively. When the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. When the earth's killing intent is released, the dragon snake shall rise. When the human's killing intent is released, heaven and earth shall topple. Wah! Su Zimo was shocked. He was way too familiar with those 3 sentences. Those 3 sentences were the opening profoundness of the 3 great sword arts. Suddenly, Su Zimo asked, Senior, have you ever heard of anyone in the sword world who once obtained the creation green lotus? There was one. Immortal Queen Ling Long nodded. It's said that this person nurtured the creation green lotus to grade 11. The most famous thing about this person is the 3 great sword arts he created alongside a peerless divine power that shook the entire Trichiliacosm. Su Zimo nodded. There was no mistake. In that case, this expert of the sword world had once obtained the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra and comprehended the 3 great sword arts from this secret skill sutra. It was no wonder why immortal Queen Ling Long would say that different people would comprehend different dharmic Taos from the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.